achieve the full objectives of Operation Epic Fury. Again, to destroy their missiles and their ability to make them, destroy their navy, permanently deny them nuclear weapons forever, and to, of course, weaken their evil terrorist proxies in the region. We know that the U.S. military and our brave warfighters are quickly and expeditiously executing these objectives well ahead of schedule, but ultimately the operations will end when the commander-in-chief determines the military objectives have been met, fully realized, and that Iran is in a position of
Hi.
unconditional surrender.
So this is crazy Carolyn Levitt,
Well, when
the
President Trump says that Iran is in a place
adept
of
liar
surrender, he's not
press
saying that the
secretary,
Iranian regime is going to come
answering
down on
questions
itself.
about the
What the
Iranian
president
war,
means is
which
that
is
Iran's
illegal.
threats will no
It's
longer
an
be
illegal
credible,
war
and
done
this
without
missile
Congress.
arsenal that protects them from building a
Um,
nuclear bomb in their country. I could
so we're going to
make an
see
empty threat,
what
but
they
if I have
say.
no actions to back it up,
Supposedly,
it's
they're giving a
meaningless.
timeline,
And so President Trump will determine
but
when
she's
Iran
avoiding giving a
announces
timeline.
unconditional surrender, when they no longer pose a
Unconditional
credible military
surrender?
threat to the United
No
States,
way.
America, and our allies.
Unconditional surrender is a recipe for a forever war.
Can you explain why the Energy Secretary posted and then appeared to have deleted a post on X saying that the U.S. Navy escorted an oil tanker through the Strait of Hormuz?
Yes, I was made aware of this post. I haven't had a chance to talk to the Energy Secretary about it directly. However, I know the post was taken down pretty quickly, and I can confirm that the U.S. Navy has not escorted a tanker or a vessel at this time, though, of course, that's an option the president has said he will absolutely utilize if and when necessary at the appropriate time.
So we're already making mistakes and lying and can't get our story straight. Excellent.
What, I guess, will there be any consequences for this? I know you still have to consult, but just generally speaking.
Again, I would defer you to the Department of Energy to answer that question.
And if I could just follow up really quickly.
Sure.
In terms of oil sanctions, the president said that there would be some sanctions that would be lifted. Would those be on Venezuela, Russia? Could you give some specifics there and then timing for that as well?
Sure. I know it's something that the Treasury Department and the president's energy team continue to discuss, and they will ultimately consult with the president before decisions are made. I don't have any announcements on new sanctions or the lifting of new sanctions for you today. Alex.
Thank you. Reuters has reported that about 150 U.S. Service members have been injured so far. Can you confirm that number and elaborate on that?
150 injuries?
The exact number. I know it's within that ballpark, but I would defer you to the Pentagon.
It's her job to know the numbers of injuries and deaths on this. That is the number one thing anyone, even a friendly journalist, would want to ask about. We don't know how many people are getting injured?
Briefing on the Capitol Hill.
At least 150?
Some senators came out and said they were more convinced than ever that there would be U.S. boots on the ground. Senator Blumenthal said that. In fact, your reaction to that and any update on President Trump's thinking about it?
Look, I would say that Democrats on Capitol Hill are clearly being quite disingenuous. 3 years ago, not a single Democrat voted against the resolution condemning Iran as the world's leading state sponsor of terror. Yet now, with President Trump as commander-in-chief finally taking...
Now it is an illegal war.
Democrats have called
There's a difference between knowing a country is bad and supporting an illegal war at the cost of American lives and money.
Are playing politics with this long-standing bipartisan policy of the United States, and 53 of them in the House recently voted against the resolution condemning Iran as the world's state sponsor of terror. So I wouldn't take Democrats at their word. As for boots on the ground, the president has talked about this repeatedly. Wisely, he does not rule options out as commander-in-chief. So again, I would hesitate to confirm anything that a Democrat on Capitol Hill says right now about the president's thinking. Garrett.
John, you outlined to Steve the military components of what would be involved in ending this war, but it seems like there's a political component too. The president said to Fox earlier today that he doesn't believe the new Ayatollah can live in peace. He made a variety of comments suggesting that he should be involved in picking the new Iranian leader. Is the ending of this war also contingent on Iran selecting a leader that the president finds acceptable? And if so, how is that not the definition of a regime change war?
Look, as President Trump has...
This is a regime change war. This is a regime change war.
And the West, to no longer
this is a regime change war.
Terrorist in charge of Iran, especially as we see their
due to Donald's reckless actions, Iran is now led by a more radical terrorist dictator, by the way.
We look at the way that they are holding the entire world hostage with the restricting of the free flow of energy through the Strait of Hormuz. So the president, I think, is making quite an obvious comment. Again, as for the timeline of the military operations with respect to Iran, we have objectives that we have laid out that the commander-in-chief wants to see achieved. When they are achieved, then it will ultimately be up to the president to end this operation.
Okay, so I think you're not exactly addressing my question, though. Is that political objective also necessary for the president to decide to end this war?
Look, again, I just told you.
Ooh, she's dodging the question. This is a regime change war.
The president will dictate the end of these operations when he deems that Iran no longer poses a credible threat to the United States of America. And again, it goes back to what does that unconditional surrender look like? Iran can talk all they want.
Iran was not a credible threat to the United States of America, by the way, until the United States attacked Iran. They did not have a nuclear bomb.
And that's what President Trump is ultimately seeking to do with respect to this operation. Jennifer.
They didn't have a nuclear bomb, any such infrastructure. The United States took credit for destroying months ago.
I don't, but we certainly will get you more details, Jennifer, and I don't know if the president has briefed, but I'll check on that when I get back to the Oval Office after this. Sure.
Thanks, Caroline. The president said yesterday for the first time that he had to strike Iran because he believes that Iran was going to strike U.S. targets within 7 days, and then he bumped that down later to 3 days. Where is he getting that?
Well, that's not the first time the president has said that he chose to launch Operation Epic Fury because he felt as though Iran was going to strike the United States and our assets in the region first. Again,
All she's doing is repeating the same talking point.
This is a feeling the president had based on facts.
The question was, where is he getting his time frame, and why does he keep adjusting it? No such facts have been provided. This is a red flag. Also, there's been flip-flopping on whether or not this is about destroying weapons that have already been destroyed, or a regime change war, which it is.
Missile arsenal, they were rapidly and aggressively increasing that by the month to a place where they would essentially build immunity for themselves, where a future president or President Trump would not be able to launch this incredibly successful operation. And so the president, again, as I have reiterated and he has said, was not going to sit back.
Are 7 Americans dead and 150 Americans injured what we're considering to be acceptable now? It's a pretty pathetic low bar.
Same claims. So is he making this up to justify his decision to go to war now?
The president is not making anything up, Nancy. He is looking at this every single day based on intelligence, based on facts, and based on intelligence that he himself and his negotiators have consumed based on their, again, negotiations with the rogue Iranian regime over the past year. And the president and his team...
What about the rogue Trump regime, unaccountable to its own constitution, unaccountable to Congress?
Iran chose this path to death and destruction. Iran wanted to attack the United States of America, and the president...
That's victim blaming. And Iran did not attack the United States of America. The United States of America attacked Iran.
John.
Thanks a lot, Caroline. 2 questions for you. One has to do with a follow-up to your statement that you made at the beginning of the briefing regarding the Save America Act.
Sure.
Yesterday, the Senate Majority Leader John Thune spoke on the effort to potentially have a filibuster broken, the rules for the filibuster broken. He said the votes aren't there, one, to nuke the filibuster, and the votes aren't there for a talking filibuster. He says that's the reality. What's your reaction to what Senator Thune said?
Look, I think President Trump, the urgency behind his need to pass the Save America Act and his desire to get this country-saving legislation passed has been made quite clear.
Donald is desperate to rig the upcoming midterm elections by removing American citizens from voter rolls en masse. Because that's the only way they can win at this point. Especially with this war, even MAGA is being torn in half. It's wholly unacceptable, and it will be a blue tidal wave of accountability. That is the only reason why the illegal SAVE Act is being pushed here. It's the next Jim Crow.
Last week, the Energy Secretary issued a waiver for India to get oil, Russian oils during this energy crisis.
Yes.
Have you spoken to President about it? What's the idea behind this?
Have I spoken to the president about it?
Yeah.
Yes, I have spoken to the president about it. And the president and the Secretary of Treasury and the whole national security team came to this decision because our allies in India, as you know, Lalit, have been good actors and have previously stopped buying sanctioned Russian oil. So as we work to appease this temporary gap of oil supply around the world because of the Iranians, we have temporarily permitted them to accept that Russian oil. And this Russian oil was already at sea. It was already out on the water. So this short-term measure, we don't believe it will provide significant financial benefit to the Russian government at this time.
I have one more question about Pakistan. You know, Pakistan is a neighbor of
Easing
Iran.
sanctions on Russia
Pakistan is also an ally
makes
of
America
Iran.
weaker.
It has been facing
It's a reckless, needless ceding of power and money
support in this war.
to
That I will have to
one
check
of
with
America's
Get back.
biggest enemies on the world stage.
The president said yesterday that President Putin told him he wanted to be helpful in the Middle East. The Kremlin
Like, it's just bad geopolitics.
said, quote, I would like to reaffirm our unwavering support for Tehran and our solidarity with Iranian friends. How does the president think that Russia could be helpful, if not helping Iran? And did the president push Putin on Russia sharing intelligence with Iran in this war?
The president and his special envoy Witkoff have both said that, of course, they've sent a message to Russia that if that was taking place, it's not something they would be happy with, and they hope that it is not taking place. As for further details about the discussions between these two leaders, I'll leave it to the president to divulge any more of that conversation, but he did confirm it yesterday and provided you with a little bit of the background and his view and his perspective, as he always does. Luke.
Regarding the missile strike on the Iranian school, how long does the administration expect that investigation to take, and will the White House or the Department of Defense release a full report of its findings once the investigation is complete?
The Department of War will do that. The investigation continues, and as the president said yesterday at his press conference, he will accept the conclusion of that investigation, whatever it may be. We'll go to the back row for some love.
It is not acceptable for the United States to be blowing Tomahawk missiles to destroy young girls' elementary schools, by the way, killing dozens of innocent young girls. It's a human rights atrocity, but even to the most sociopathic neocon warhawk, what a tremendous failure of anyone in any position of power, and what a tremendous waste of money. It's just inexcusably bad on every front.
And the president believes and knows that the Cuban regime wants a deal. So as you know, Secretary of State Rubio has been engaged in those conversations as directed by the president. I don't have any updates for you today, though.
Thank you, Caroline. Regarding the Shield of the Americas, the initiative by President Trump this weekend, big names, a lot of countries, but some notable absences. For instance, Colombia, which is a key ally with the United States in terms of counter-narcotics, and President Gustavo Petro was here at the White House, and he met with President Trump. Why wasn't Colombia invited to the Shield of the Americas?
I don't think we're seeing the level of cooperation we quite want to see yet from the Colombian government to invite them to the Shield of America's event in Pact, but we certainly hope that this newfound organization will expand and we can continue to invite additional member countries. But there were
Every
quite a few
time
countries there. I believe there were 17 countries represented.
every time that this regime tries to brag about how respected they are on the world stage, notice the allies they get. Notice the small group of shithole countries that ever grows smaller.
Ultimately, of course, to curb
Colombia, an ally, wasn't invited
United States, which is the
or didn't come.
utmost priority in all of this. So it was a great event on Saturday, and we look forward to the coalition expanding. Kelly in the back.
It's suspicious when our supposed allies are not there. Hi.
Aspects, but there's also the ideological and the spiritual aspects of what Iran has said for 47 years. Death to America, death to Israel. And we've just finished talking about the fact that terror has been around the world. Iran has been the nexus of that in so many ways. Has the president stated clearly to the American people why this is such an imminent threat in order for Democrats?
He has not. There is not an imminent threat. Any nuclear arsenal, supposedly, allegedly, according to the Trump regime, was destroyed 8 months ago. So what is the urgent, imminent threat?
You've heard it from me at this podium. You've heard it from the Secretary of War, the Secretary of State, the Vice President of the United States. You know, the President's top cabinet and his officials have been repeatedly explaining to the American public the threat that Iran has posed to our country in this moment, but of course over the course of the past 47 years. And their words, again, chanting death to America, speak for themselves. Go ahead. You can follow up.
Why the division within the American people? I realize that we have people talking.
Yeah, all these tariffs are disastrous for any international relationship.
But have people forgotten just how imminent that threat was? If they keep saying death to America,
Like, we've scorned every ally.
Look, I don't think the American people have forgotten, but I think Democrats on Capitol Hill, they have not forgotten, but they are just so plagued with this resistance to President Trump on everything that they do, that again, they can't even rally behind the common sense, bipartisan, long-standing principle of the United States of America, that Iran absolutely poses a threat to the United States, that Iran is the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism. And I think that's reflected again in their voting pattern. In 2023, every single member of the House of Representatives, with the exception of one, I believe the final vote was 412 to 1 in 2023 for a resolution condemning Iran as the world's state leading sponsor of terror. And now in this year, under this president in 2026, 53 Democrats voted against that.
Yeah, not to excuse anything awful they've done, but just sociologically, there are enough instances of things like terrorism and just things like really chaotic dictatorial regimes in the world that historians have looked at them and studied them. We have some sense of what works and some sense of the things that just lead to relapses, effectively, that lead to just the same thing happening or a different version of the same thing or something slightly worse, and conditions do not improve. And you can take a look, even within like our lifetimes generally, all of the U.S. intervention in the Middle East, which of those countries is now a Western European style democracy, and which of them are still really hateful, horribly corrupt, anti-Western, anti-science, anti-democracy, anti-human rights, theocratic, dictatorial hellscapes. You know, like, it's a theory of change. What if we just went in there and declared war and smashed everything, and then someone else better will show up? That's a hypothesis. It has been thoroughly tested. And at this point, to continue to do the same, like, we know how this goes. It leads to a lot of suffering, a lot of lives lost on both sides, a lot of money wasted, and it does nothing but radicalize the next generation to hate America slightly more, and then we do it all again. It only makes sense from the perspective of, like, guaranteeing long-term work and profit opportunities for the military-industrial complex.
On this, making claims that have just not been verified by the Department of War to quickly wrap up this investigation because the New York Times is calling on us to do so.
Like, America is just not helping here.
Does the administration have any specific concerns about potential impact on homeland security or intelligence monitoring of sleeper cells inside the United States? And do you have any comment on the bomb units which those individuals that bombed New York City are trying to?
Yeah, it was absolutely despicable to see that attack in New York City. I know the FBI is investigating, and the Department of Justice and SDNY have announced they are charging those two individuals and alleged terrorists, and I know they won't rest until justice is sought in this case. Daniel.
Thank you, Caroline. Appreciate it. Millions of Americans are filing taxes for the first time since the president signed the One Big Beautiful Bill Act into law. New reports say that new IRS data says that the average federal tax refund is around $3,800, a little bit up from the last period of last year. Does the president believe that the average federal tax refund increasing this year could provide a little bit more economic growth, something that he's been very focused on as the year progresses?
Absolutely. And Americans are going to start benefiting from the fruits of President Trump and Republicans' labor through the passage of the One Big Beautiful Bill and these historic tax cuts. We are midway through tax season, so just to provide an update from the Treasury Department that just went out moments ago, nearly 63.
Yeah, it's always come at a cost. It's always come at a tremendous cost, and I've yet to see the benefit. Like, the first time in your life you hear about one of these U.S. Middle Eastern interventionist wars, I completely understand a layperson understanding the pitch. It's a nation run by bad guys, and we can get rid of the bad guys. But it's so much easier to destroy than to build, and there is no plan to build. There is no infrastructure to build. And there hasn't been. Like, to make something, I think most issues are become best discussed when we push them to the point of kind of a dry, depoliticized, like, boring realism. I think that's when you get to the heart of it. And it's like, at the end of the day, being a politician or an appointed person in an administration like this, it's a job with duties. And it's like, the point is, we've all pooled our money together and pooled some votes together and voted for people who can then appoint the rest of the people to solve problems and make the world a better place. First, obviously, for the citizens who put them there, and then, you know, with whatever time and money we have left, for everybody else, because why not? Like, let's just make the world a better place, because we also live in the world. And it's a cool flex. But there has been no effort to problem solve, which to me is a failure of, like, the core job duty there. If you view it not as, like, this weird virtue signal thing, and a lot of these people are huge into, like, virtue signaling. A lot of Republicans, more so than Democrats. There's nothing there. Yeah, and that's the thing with, like anarchism as a concept. I'll switch to my camera really quick. Yeah, I get anarchism, like, in theory. Let's go to my camera, yeah. Hi. Anarchism in concept is this idea that we could just kind of create a pure society by not having any of these rules, not having any of these governments, not having any positions of power to abuse, getting rid of all those hierarchies. And a lot of modern people, especially online, especially younger people, who get into that, it's, like, very theoretical. It's very pure. And I totally get that in theory. Like, it's very appealing. But, like, the problem is, how do we get from here to there? And there's usually this, like, vague fantasy about a revolution, which is deeply parallel to crazy, like, anarcho-capitalist libertarians on the right, who are just, like, doomsday preppers, who unironically, like, wanted a war like what we're having now in Iran, because they think there's this, like, biblical, we have to usher in the end times thing, and then this sort of might makes right, only the strong will survive. And both groups are banking on, like, there will be some, they don't have to do anything, it's out of their hands, excuse and opportunity for a big reset, and then they will just be in charge because they're the best, and they would only win if only there was no one else standing in their way. They would immediately prove the most meritorious and survive. And I just don't think it works. It's not really going to get there. And there's a lot of brushing over, like, the realism of that with this sort of bizarre, selfish, unrealistic power fantasy that you could just be a badass in the Mad Max landscape or in the, you know, whatever else. And I just don't think that's true. I don't think that's how things work. I think it's incredibly ableist. I think it's a nightmarish to even suggest we should just blow up society, because there are things you don't think about that we need and we benefit from that are really hard to make. Like a post office. Do you know how to set up a postal system from scratch, like, nationally? You need a lot of offices, you need a lot of workers, you need to know everyone's address, you need to have maps, you need to have a schedule, like, just hundreds of hours of spreadsheet work. You need cars, you need bags, you need people on foot. It's just, there's so much infrastructure that I just don't think it's worth it. Like, anyone whose ideology depends on first we need to blow up everything and destroy everything, it's not going to happen. That's too much work. It's more work than you know how to do. That's more work than I know how to do. It's also creating conditions that are going to first endanger and kill some of the most vulnerable people in society, you know? People who don't have a lot going for them. They don't have a lot of money. Who don't have a safety cushion, right? It's like some upper middle class person can have their big doomsday prepper house out in the country with a fully stocked for years basement. A lot of people are working paycheck to paycheck. What are they supposed to do? Well, people need medicine. I need medicine. I'm not making it a month if the postal system goes down and the pharmacies go down. You can't get meds delivered. If I can't get meds fulfilled, even if I go to pick them up from the pharmacy, because how are they getting to the pharmacy? How are they getting manufactured? Like, I don't want a nuclear winter. I don't want a revolution. And anyone who does, like, I don't know, to me that's a betrayal of the idealism that I think things like anarchism philosophically are meant to represent. Like, to minimize harm, to maximize freedom, and then to just create a completely unsupported hellscape at any phase of that. I don't know. And then sometimes you have people who define anarchism just as, like, reducing unnecessary hierarchy. But, like, that's just how any system works, right? That's the same thing as, like, any moderate politician on either side saying, like, let's cut unnecessary red tape. But it's just a matter of opinion of what that actually is. Anyone who's worked in any group, for even a little bit, even if it's just a school project, will very quickly learn sometimes you just need someone who's, like, in charge of rallying up everybody and looking at the big picture. And other people just really want to focus on their specific thing and not worry about the rest. And that's not, like, evil. So very quickly, it's not fun. But even when you have, like, just a dozen people, you get into this concept of just hierarchies. Or, like, you know, it's really just a spectrum of, like, it sucks, but we got to do it. There's not a better alternative. And, yeah, I used to see a lot more from, like, leftist spaces about they thought and believed in those kind of ideologies. And it ended up crashing a lot on just exhausting, like, uselessness and, like, it's, I don't know, a deep disinterest in running even their own groups, let alone running the world. Thank you for the J's. TikTok. So there is one other thing I really wanted to look at today, because I started seeing this earlier and I was stunned and I just wanted to go through it on stream. This big thing I like talking about and obsessing about is I have, like, a design and tech background and been an internet girl my whole life. And I think it's important to go through some of the ways that, like, online, like, political people especially, can lie and weasel through stuff. Because they're very good at talking and they're very slippery. And usually you see that from, like, more streamer types. And there are some conversations right now among streamers and stuff and debates and stuff that I might go through at some point. But this one struck me as a little higher priority at a base. I started to see a bit of a podcast with Ezra Klein from the New York Times, who's, like, a moderate liberal. He's a co-author of Abundance. And he is against this illegal Iran war, so he's a normal person in that respect. He was really against the war, but wanted to kind of understand it. And he found a former Trump official who was trying to justify the war and interviewed her. I don't know how I feel about him either. Like, I don't know. I don't figure out him. But, he found this Trump official, this, like, old lady that he interviewed, who's trying to defend the war. And she is so stunningly evil. And I get that everyone, no matter where you are politically, can arrive at the conclusion of, like, not liking moderate liberals. That's fair. Moderate liberals don't even like moderate liberals. But I don't think anyone can hate Republicans enough. And I just had to, like, stop this, and we're going to go through it from the start. And I want to clip this into a video and just see what evil, vile trickiness looks like here. Just, it's impressive. I mean, I would consider it sociopathic. Like, it seems almost kind of, like, oblivious, but it's too informed, it's too slippery. Like, she has to know what she's doing and doing this on purpose, which makes just another level of vile evil. And yeah, people from his first term were better than the ones he has now, because now they're just prioritizing loyalty. But it's stunning to me, the naivete and the deliberate evil among people in these circles who give people the benefit of the doubt. I think anyone giving someone like Donald Trump the benefit of the doubt are just stupid. He doesn't have a plan. He doesn't have any thoughts. The simplest explanations are most often the truth. He's a pedophile rapist who wants to save his own ass and will do anything to get around that. And frankly, I think with the Iran war, he knew more allegations against him raping children were going to drop. So he took the first flashy spectacle idea as a distraction that someone near him suggested. And for years, Marco Rubio has wanted to go to war with Iran. Marco Rubio is in Donald Trump's inner circle. When Donald Trump describes the Iran war, the illegal Iran war that he started, he does not seem to know much. He does not seem to have any specific plan or goals. It doesn't seem like it started or entails his plan at all. I think it was someone else's idea, and he said, sure, why not? Because it helps him with his personal goals. Because more evidence came out corroborating some of the claims of a minor who alleges Donald Trump raped her. She's not a minor now, but she was when she was allegedly raped by Donald Trump. So this is Ezra Klein interviewing a Iran war apologist.
Americans thought they were voting for.
A short time ago, the United States military began major combat operations in Iran.
It is not the presidency that Donald Trump and the people around him claimed they would get.
Oh, I forgot to switch the screen, didn't I? Here we go. Sorry, it didn't work. Here we go.
I'm going to be the one that keeps you out of war. I'm going to keep you out of war. We're not going to have war in the Middle East. We did no wars. I had no wars. They said, he will start a war. I'm not going to start a war. I'm going to stop war.
I think what was most surprising to me over the last couple of days was seeing that at least the one red line many assumed Trump and his administration had, no ground troops in Iran. Even that was no longer holding. Trump gave this interview to the New York Post where he said, quote, I don't have the yips with respect to boots on the ground. Like every president says there will be no boots on the ground. I don't say it.
Something that really bothers me about this is at first their excuse was it's not a war. It's a special military operation. And then more recently, they've just been calling it a war. And they've specifically been referring to the Department of War. It's the Department of Defense. And they've been calling anyone involved war fighters, which is the most cringe, LARPy Starship Troopers shit. But yeah, they realized they could just lie about it and then slowly stop trying. And enough people fell for it, I guess.
Say, probably don't need them. Probably don't need them. I am obviously opposed to this war. I think there was not consultation with the American public. I don't think there was consultation with Congress. Obviously not with the UN. I don't think they're prepared for what they might unleash. But I wanted to try to...
So, mixed feelings on Ezra Klein, but he's on the right side of this one, which is just not a high bar. I think most people know. Like, Congress needs to declare war. No one asked for this. No one voted for this. Americans are dead. Iranians are dead. Children are dead. Women are dead.
Hudson Institute. Dan, that's not
Who's
from
this
my
woman?
perspective, but from the perspective of somebody much friendlier to Donald Trump's foreign policy. Somebody who's tried to think about what his doctrine and approach might mean, who even helped craft it in his first term. Nadia Shadlow is a senior fellow at the Hudson Institute. She served...
Okay, Nadia Shadlow, the Hudson Institute. So we're gonna call her Nadia. Yeah. So it's a bit of a softball interview, but and this is with a bit of a more normal defender of it. Yeah.
Served as a deputy national security advisor during Trump's first term. She led the drafting and publication of the 2017 National Security Strategy of the United States.
Also, I'm just going to say this. Anything fascistic is not rooted in ideology in a formal sense. It's not rooted in a theory of change or anything. That's just not the case. That's not how it emerges. It doesn't come from any rational higher level order of anything. It's more so like any social construction, defined after the fact. And anything fascistic or aggressive or dictatorial starts from a place of bullying and impulse and then builds up around it, right? Like with something like communism, they have books that it's based on. It's based on some sense of theory. Not outdated theory, but like a sense of theory. You know, it's coming from something. Fascism isn't. Fascism doesn't start with an ideology or a book or a philosophy. It just doesn't. Fascism in Italy started with angry young men who were young veterans from World War I who felt purposeless and unwilling to adapt to their society. And so they started meeting in clubs and then turned that bullying and anger into a political movement. In Nazi Germany, same thing, just this feeling of vengeance, and they were wronged from World War I, and then building it up into something, to like angsty young men. What we're seeing now with MAGA, it didn't come from anything. I mean, MAGA started with Trump being humiliated by Obama at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. And so when I see a woman like this, like, oh, she's, understands and tries to describe like the theory of how Trump acts and things, it's just apologia. It's not true. It's a misrepresentation. It's revisionism. Sorry, ads.
Nadia Shadlow, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Ezra. Pleasure to be here.
In 2018, you described Donald Trump as a conservative realist. What did you mean by that?
Well, realism essentially means that you look at the world the way it is, not as you wish it to be. And I think Donald Trump is someone who sees the world in a particular way.
And even that is just a carte blanche apologia for whatever he happens to think or feel. The way it is, what does that mean? That's an interpretation. She presumes her own validity. And that's the danger with stuff like this. There's this presumption of factual and moral authority that's not really true or based in anything. And then that's used to justify attacking, hurting, killing other people, including American people, including American tax dollars, but also including, obviously, and I wish this was enough, innocent young girls who are going to school.
I think Donald Trump is someone who sees the world in a particular way. It's a world that's competitive. It's a world in which power matters. It's a world in which nation states matter, interests matter. So that's what I meant by the realism part. And
no one is on the other side of that. It's too vague to mean anything useful.
National Security Strategy of 2025, which I'm sure we'll get into, actually, they use the term flexible realism. So I might actually say that might be more accurate today. You don't want to do everything everywhere. You will take risks, but essentially you don't want to...
Flexible realism? That's just lying.
Necessarily.
So how did that, in your...
Aha, and there's the thing, making sure power is not expended unnecessarily. I talked earlier about how a lot of anarchists will get around any specific conversations by saying, oh, I'm just against, like, unnecessary hierarchy, right? Because it sounds smart, it sounds normal, but it's really just, like, a personal virtue signal. Like, everyone is against bad things and for good things, but you have to get more specific and objective than that. Because if that's always your rule, you don't actually have any rules. It's still just an opinion call that she's trying to dress up in anything greater. And all she's doing is playing cover for the biases that she and others, like Donald, may hold, without actually reflecting or justifying any of them. And it's dangerous. She set this up as if she's framing a practical ideology, and all she's doing is just deferring back to that, like, emotional impulse she has inside and saying, yeah, I just go with that. It's how stupid sounds smart.
Conception differ from maybe the Republican-leaning schools of thought people are more familiar with, which is neoconservatives, right, the George W. Bush era, and then paleo-conservatives or isolationists, which is often how people have at least framed Donald Trump.
Yeah, I mean, I think this article that we're talking about was in 2018, so it was about a year. It was about a year after I left, a few months after I left the administration, I think, at that point. And liberal internationalism, some people use the term neocons, essentially has a more interventionist philosophy, a sense that America can go in and should often try to reshape the world in its image. This is the classic definition, that's a good thing. and it's probably more optimistic about a sense that all countries can adopt democracy, and maybe democracy that looks like us.
A little weird there. Does that seem sketchy to anyone else? Like, it felt very judgmental. I don't know. It feels like she's throwing in some bias in the characterization there. It feels negative. The way that she frames democracy as sort of just one option of, like, it's cocky to say that could work for other countries and that it would be a good thing. That's the implication there, as if all systems and ideas are created equal, which they're not. They are not. Let's be very clear about this. Like, a theocratic dictatorship is not as good as even a boring neoliberal representative democracy with laissez-faire capitalism. It's just not. I'm not saying that's the best or ideal, but I mean, come on. Like, it's this ignorant rejection of sense of rationalism, of the ability to study and analyze and compare. Already see the slip in. So anti-intellectualism has really taken over. You get this epistemic anti-realism where there's not really a sense of truth. It's kind of just your vibe and your opinion, man. Like, we can't actually measure or compare these things or choose. And that's not true.
Human rights around the world. We want to promote liberal values around the world, and we are open to interventions around the world to do that. The sort of more isolationist wing of the Republican Party, usually, it's not just the Republican Party, right? I think you also see that in the progressive left too, a sense of let's pull.
Hey, yeah, I'm trying to stream every day now.
We'll call that group retrenchers. I think the left sometimes adopts that view with the rationale that America is a cause of problems, and by going abroad, by being abroad, we sort of create antibodies, and we shouldn't be messing around in those places. There's a little bit of that on the right too, but on the right, I think the retrencher isolationist view is that we have to focus on our problems at home. What happens in the rest of the world really doesn't matter, and we need to consolidate kind of our power here at home first.
So she very bizarrely wrote off, like, the downsides of interventionism as, like, oh, it creates, like, antibodies. It's a very dehumanizing thing. You know, like, you can see, even the way she describes something, she's putting this, like, emotional spin on it, of either making it seem more friendly or, like, dismissive and less important and more abstracted and less worth thinking about. And that's not true. And I'm not taking a stance on, like, interventionism versus isolationism. But even there, like, the sense that, oh, interventionism has downsides and negative consequences, we just shouldn't worry about it. She's already proposed a false dichotomy. Because what about interventionism where we actually get smarter about it and adapt our tactics to, we can still intervene, but mitigate the negative consequences? Right? Like, she doesn't consider that to be a possibility. And this is the pretext with which she sets up for war. Just this dichotomy, either we get in there and do whatever we want, or we stay home and do nothing, which is a bad framing she can use to try and badly argue for either end. But it's ignorance to the diverse reality that sometimes it is good to intervene, depending on the context, and sometimes it's not. And when we do, we can be smart and have different methods for different situations, or mixed methods, whether that's peaceful power, right? Like, U.S. aid was a brilliant idea. U.S. aid was, and it's tragic this is cut. It should be increased. U.S. aid is how we build and maintain soft power over the world, because a really good way to save American lives and money and prevent things from getting to antagonistic terrorist groups across the world, trying to attack America and hating America and trying to start war with America, is you get that country and that people friendly to America. So that means instead of just waiting for things to boil up like a powder keg until it explodes into war, if they associate the USA as, like, the people who come in and just, like, help with some, like, basic welfare stuff, like food and stuff, that creates, like, gratitude and safety, and, like, they owe us one, and they have no logical reason to antagonize the U.S. Like, there's a gratitude there. And that's actually, even though we'd spend some money on like supplies and like nonviolent, peaceful aid to countries, and it does cost a lot of money globally, it is cheaper because it's the alternative is war. It builds you relationships. It's really good also to lead into, not only does it avoid war, it helps like ease things so you can help a country stabilize and start to build up. And then when they're ready to trade, because they're now in a like a better spot where they can start trading, they're going to want to trade with you because you're their longtime friend and homie, and they owe you one. And like it's such a smart way to maintain power. And when you have good trade relationships, people really don't want to go to war with you because not only would they take the casualties of war, but they lose their business. They lose the money that's coming in from trade. So yeah, like this completely rules out that concept entirely. That's like really stupid, right? Like lots of these like America first people are like, yeah, screw USA, we should care about us here. They don't realize they're getting like a return on that investment, and it's saving them for a worse cost. You cut USA to now you get wars. That's the general trend we'll start to see. Like you lose allies, you lose trade from other places, which means we lose access to cheap goods, which means we're at a greater risk of war, which means we will need to be taxed more to pay for those wars, which means Americans will die in those wars, and everything just down spirals. The concept of positive relationships seems to just be lost on them.
And grow our economy, and that the two, I think wrongly, are mutually exclusive, right? I think they're interlinked.
So when I hear that definition of conservative realism, and often when I hear definitions of realism, it feels to me a lot can hide in two particular parts of it. One is the way the world is, the world as it is. People disagree.
I'm shocked to see him actually call this out. That's good.
So when you say that, either for Donald Trump, how do you think he really understands the world to be? And then, of course, our interests. There's I think you would often hear the term America first, right? So what are our interests? How do you think about those two sides of Trump's foreign policy?
That's a really good call out. Yeah, because she said a sentence that sounds reasonable in itself, but it is, it's vague enough that it applies seemingly non-controversially, and it seems like agreeable. It seems not controversial, but it's actually highly opinionated and hiding a lot and permitting a lot and excusing a lot. This gets into the P.T. Barnum effect, actually. If you've ever had like a horoscope and it's like this vague description, right? I can look at you and say, hey, you sometimes are outgoing and you want to explore and meet up with your friends and you can value those relationships. But other times you do get burnt out and you want some time to yourself. And you like hobbies that are entertaining to you, even if they're not super social. Something like gaming or reading a book or makeup or even cooking that helps you connect and express yourself. And you can be really confident sometimes and can go outgoing and you're proud of what you do. But other times you're insecure and you worry about the future. And you look to those relationships and new opportunities because you're not sure what's totally ahead. You're wary but excited for the path in your next 5 years. That is something that probably applies to you. How I do that, though, is I'm being vague and I'm covering all bases in a way where I'm not actually telling you anything specific. This is just generalities. It's not actually an opinion. I'm not like describing anyone in particular. So it seems impressive until you step back and realize, like, what is this? Because she just said, oh yeah, no, like this ideology, this conservative realism is just seeing the world how it is. Who among you would say you don't see the world as it is? This just gives everyone like this cocky blank check to describe their own opinion. That's all that is. And it's bad because it means she's just taking for granted like a lot of bigotry and cutting out a lot of nuance. It's affirming this, I'm confident, I don't need to learn anything new.
Right. So I think that you're right. The assumptions are different. So for instance, when Trump came into office in 2017, he was focused, I think, on three kind of broad themes. One, this idea that America was in decline and had been in decline for some time. And he was going to fix that. He was going to help to renew it. And as part of that, he was going to do some significant reordering of institutions. So for President Trump, first term, and I think continuing, he saw the roots of that decline in several areas. Decline due to the effects of globalization and the disindustrialization of the United States. Decline due to trade imbalances that harm the United States and had been harming the United States for quite some time. Decline due to a lack of pride in what America stood for and what America was. Decline due to other countries taking advantage of our security guarantees. I'm giving you examples of the reasons. Now, I think...
Okay, that is interesting there. This is another example of this. And this is something that Donald Trump is really good at, actually. Is this concept of, how do I put this? Yeah, sort of that P.T. Barnum effect. Donald Trump didn't show up with any specific ideology on any of this. Just this general sense of, like, you all suck and I'm better. And then he let these voter blocks and these special interests come to him and shape this message. He didn't have any opinions on trade deals personally, beyond wanting to spite Hillary Clinton and Obama. He didn't have any opinion on industrial jobs. Those aren't his jobs. But Donald Trump's background is not in business. He's a terrible businessman. He's a brilliant marketer. So he was able to utilize that big tent feeling of like things are bad and could be better. And then he let people fill in the blanks. And now people give him credit for all these specific things that he never came up with or vocalized first. And he never specifically fulfilled. And when he doesn't fulfill them, he'll just say, well, I never promised that. Which is true. So it's just like little weaseling behavior here and there. How Donald Trump works is like an infomercial. Because he's using that marketing logic. It's very basic, right? Where the first part of an infomercial, you show people sad. It's in black and white. They're clumsy. They're stumbling around. They feel bad. They're angry. They're depressed. They're boring. They're miserable. They're anxious. They're crying. And then you introduce the product as a solution. And then you just let them run wild. That's what Donald Trump's actual message was, make America great again. That's implying something, but it doesn't tell you what specifically it implies. And what we're seeing now, as MAGA is fracturing, is a bunch of different groups projected their own answer to what it means for America to be great again into that. And now that actual decisions are being made and actual policies are being implemented, they're realizing it was a lie because they feel lied to, because they presumed a specific answer was given to them, and that specific trust has been broken. They built up an expectation on that blank check, and that expectation has been broken. For a lot of people, Make America Great Again was a dog whistle to Jim Crow era openly racist America. A lot of people voted for that. Some other people did vote because economy bad, and they just assumed he's the business guy on the TV. He knows how money works, and they didn't understand or comprehend he's really bad at business. But like, I could see how like if you just don't watch the news and you just like glance at it out of the corner of your eye, you could like logically get there. And it's all a lie. It's all crumbling because all these things can't be true, not at once. A lot of people are really anti-Semitic, like the crazy gray person stuff. Because they were just like stupid teenage boys who don't have girlfriends, and then someone told them that, and they just clung on to that conspiracy theory because it's like a fun language they can talk about with their friends, and then they start believing it unironically. By Make America Great Again, and this is why a lot of those like neo-Nazi types now are virulently like independent third party and really hate MAGA, is because they assumed he was going to do another Holocaust. And were upset that it didn't happen and didn't happen right away. So yeah, this overconfident, here are Donald Trump's goals. It's bullshit. It's bullshit. That's what she wants them to be. And she seems like a decently smart conservative. She seems like decently grounded. She has goals. She has more of like a neocon-y kind of war hawk sort of mentality. Like she could logically say like, which are true, like, oh yeah, maybe there's some unfair trade deals and we, could do better for ourselves, right? But is that really the reason that Donald Trump had? Or is that what you would assume, like, this is what a informed, smart conservative would do that would actually benefit me? This would be a good idea. And it's that little, like, presumption and bias. You just sweep in and just assume good faith. Assume people would fill in the good idea or the smart idea. Like, no, that's you bringing this to the table. The problem is that's not it. Do I sub to the New York Times? No, I don't. For a donation, I probably could, but I can't swing it right now.
Probably if you had a different guest.
Oh yeah, that's the other thing. Donald Trump did not expect to win. Like, he was not there to solve problems. He was there to get on stage and say to everyone's face, you suck, no one should trust you, I'm great, I'm better. And because lots of people run in every presidential election because they like want to sell a book or like get on a podcast circuit or do something privately. That's Trump's whole MO. Donald Trump has flipped parties his entire life. He ran for president before. He was always identifying publicly when asked as the party that was out of power. Because that means you can very easily, without any direct personal obligations and responsibilities, say like, oh yeah, no, the people in charge, they suck. I would be better if I was in charge, but I'm not, so I never have to prove that. Right now we're seeing is he has to prove it, and we're getting a legal war. We're getting a legal war, Americans are dead, civilians are dead, a huge waste of money, huge betrayal of everyone and everything.
On the show, there might be an agreement, yes, we were in decline, but the reasons would be different. On renewal, the way that President Trump saw sort of beginning that renewal was addressing those trade imbalances, making sure that allies and partners did more for their share of security burdens, reinvigorating a sense of pride in America, putting that, first and foremost. I mean,
what is that pride and how is it lost? Realistically, the real answer is he and several people in this country hated the idea of a black president and felt in some way ashamed or disconnected or not represented by that. And these are the same people who complain about diversity in media all the time, by the way. But the one time it wasn't just a white man who looked like them, they felt like they lost the country and were furious and just wanted to burn everything down. So, like, what is the pride in the country that was lost? What are you talking about? The Obama years were awesome. Obama was like a meme. He was an icon. To this day, like, Obama has a really high approval rating. Like, people know him to be competent, well-spoken, confident, hot, smart, funny. Like, he's just a capable guy. You could disagree with some decisions. Like, drone warfare, I think, mistakes there. A little bit in defense of that, as much as anything to do with drones or, interventionism was criticized, this is what's really upsetting and awful. People will bring up statistics about, drone-related violence, but they don't compare that to the alternative, old-school, human-related violence. And it's bad. It's real bad. It's awful. And that's some important context there, because it's real bad if you consider, wow, they made mistakes with these drones, and some innocent people were killed. Have you compared that to the amount of innocent people that humans, troops on the ground, kill and abuse? It is in fact violence reduction to use drones, but even that, it's bad and could have done better, right? But part of it is Obama blew a lot of his left-leaning political capital to get the Affordable Care Act. He just blew it. That was his whole presidency, basically. And Republicans didn't really let him do anything else ever again. Huge pieces of shit. But yeah, Obama overall, considering the circumstances he was in, reasonably, anyone who, super hates Obama, I don't think has really looked into Obama, and I question the racial bias. But what is this pride in America that was lost? That was peak America. Remember how cool tech was at the time? Remember how cool social media was at the time? There was so much hope and optimism. There was no reason to really assume anything big would go wrong. Until now, I guess.
There are a list of policy issues. And then third, on reordering...
Policy issues,
he was
sure.
very comfortable in not beginning with the existing set of institutions. He came from a world in which said, well, why do we need these institutions? What have they done? What are they doing for us? And what have they done overall? What outcomes have they achieved? I still think we're seeing this today. In many ways, we're seeing it as sort of playing out in what's happening in Iran, but I'll leave it there.
Well, let me...
Okay, again, that's just a weird drive into, but the institutions are bad. What institutions? Do you think for a moment Donald Trump has any specific informed institutions about any of these departments? Consider who he nominates to be in charge of stuff, who his picks are for different cabinet roles and other appointments. He doesn't know or care what goes on in these departments. He just wants to be a king. Like, he has no opinions on institutions. Because, like, very few people care about the nuances of any of that. Like, who do you think should be in charge of the Department of Agriculture? What are they doing right or wrong? There's some nerd in a college somewhere who can answer that question. But it's incredibly unrealistic, excessive charity to bend over backwards and ascribe that to him. How many alive presidents are actually still good at basketball? True. True. Has anyone else noticed that Donald isn't even golfing anymore? His ankles are swollen, he's showing signs of late-stage syphilis, and he's not golfing anymore. He's just falling asleep all the time in meetings. Like, I don't think he can stand up and do that. Yeah, the whole admin is vibes-based. Yeah. It's like she's ascribing her own college-educated views to his actions to justify his actions. And that's not how decision-making works. It's like that meme. Oh gosh, I'm gonna pull it up. Hang on. I need a better one. Here, it's this. It's this. This is the meme. This is what she is doing with Donald Trump right now. Like, even if he did something right, it's not, like, there's no evidence of this geopolitical opinion and agenda that she is ascribing to him. So it's just a bad faith attempt at justifying any of this.
See how this fits into it. I think the impression many people have had from things Donald Trump has said has been that, among other things, he feels that George W. Bush, for that matter past Democratic governments, have been acting as the world's policemen. They have been deploying U.S. forces all around the world. The rest of the world is not paying its fair share for security. They're acting under our umbrella without giving us all that much back. And that it has reflected an inattention to our own people and our own problems and our own interests, and instead too much of us becoming the enforcement of either international institutions or others. He has been within that extremely critical of regime change and regime change wars.
We believe that the job of the United States military is not to wage endless regime change wars around the globe, senseless wars.
He's talked about their stupidity. He's talked about their wastefulness.
We've spent $8 trillion in the Middle East, and we're not fixing our roads in this country. How stupid.
A reminder, by the way, that Joe Biden passed some of the biggest, like, infrastructure reform in America. And that's smart. Joe Biden was the nice answer, trying to be bipartisan every step of the way. Joe Biden let himself be bullied and put on a smile and a happy face and just put his head down and did his job in a way that's, like, kind of tragic, like, just for this old man. Joe Biden used his really strong political capital just to distribute a ton of money into things like building new bridges, fixing roads, boring stuff that's considered not political. It's like sub-political. And all the Republicans trashed him, and all of them voted for it in their states, and all of them benefited from it in their districts, and all of them took credit for it, but they trashed the guy who gave it to them. And once Donald Trump got back, he put his name on all the signs for all the projects funded by what Joe Biden passed. So we can fix roads. But that's not Republicans' idea.
How stupid is it? And we're not fixing our highways, our tunnels, our bridges, our hospitals even, our schools even. It's crazy.
Some of the infrastructure projects were canceled. Others are still going. But any that are still up have a sign with his name by them. Things like building green energy in the US, like building solar panels, which was a brilliant way, by the way, to give manufacturing jobs to the blue-collar workers who, generationally going back, would be coal miners and stuff and can't anymore and needed new good jobs. Those programs were cut, which was not only cutting money, but cutting American jobs for, like, blue-collar workers who don't have jobs to replace them. and would benefit the American energy economy for generations to come.
That many people said about his first term was that there was a restraint to him, whatever his braggadocio and his, saber rattling, that you didn't see with some other presidents. He himself bragged that he was one of the first presidents in a very long time to have not started any new wars. People can argue about to the degree to which that was true, but it's somewhat true.
Hi.
In the second term, we've now deposed 2 heads of state in 8 weeks. We've captured Nicolas Maduro. We're bombing Iran. We killed the supreme leader of Iran. How do these things fit together for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, that's why I think when we started the conversation, flexible realism, conceded was probably the better term today, in that the 2025 national security strategy that came out, I worked on the 2017 one, but the 2025...
Flexible realism. Flexible realism. Oh, I conceded to flexible realism. Everything I said doesn't actually hold up to scrutiny. Don't hold me to any of the principles or framing or structure or logic I depend on to justify the logic of any of this. Actually, sometimes any rule I set up can just randomly be violated. And that's basically the same thing. That means her answers are invalid. Her model is not applying to describe the reality. She's saying explains and justifies the reality because the model is good.
5.1 actually uses the term flexible realism, and I think that is probably accurate, I would say. I mean, realistic in that he's seeing certain dangers in the world, and his White House...
Also, look at the way she softens her claims when she's called out and knows she's wrong. She won't even say she's wrong. A lot of radical Republicans do this, where they refuse to ever criticize their own side. It's very cultish. But what did she say?
Realistic in that he's seeing certain dangers in the world, and his White House sees certain dangers in the world for the United States, and they're going to use flexibility to deal with those dangers. So I see it as essentially...
I see it as...
saw threats.
Probably would. I would say. She's using those softeners. She's making it more subjective. This is an important thing when people write. If you read or written at a higher level, you know this, especially college level or even high school level for essays and things. You don't want to say, I think that. You just want to state what it is. But she softens it. She makes it more subjective. She's pulling back from the objectively correct criticisms.
Growing to the United States that had grown, actually, he would probably put it, I don't know, no one can speak for Trump, certainly not me, but I think he would put it as a...
Now no one can speak for him after she characterized his thought process and justified it. Now it's no one can speak for him. And then, but I think he would, instead of just stating it. All of this permission and softening. She does not stand up for what she says or believes. Where she opposes it, she should say it, but she doesn't.
In the 4 years that I was gone and I was out of office, certain key threats grew over time. He would say, the Biden administration watched these threats grow over time, and now that I'm back in office, I had to do something definitive about them. And he would point to open borders. He would point to, the millions of undocumented migrants that came through our borders. He would point to the strength of the drug cartels and transnational criminal organizations, which is why he designated many of them transnational terrorist organizations, because that actually gives the government more authority.
But it's not true. It's not terrorism. Terrorism is a word, has meaning. Terror attacks are very specific. Compared to traditional war, where it's one-to-one, terror attacks use attacks as a signal to instill terror into a broader group of people. So something like a bombing, right? Where it's meant to send a message and have a broader impact. It's sort of psychological guerrilla warfare. It's why terrorism is so dangerous. It's so scary. But this is just, it's just wrong. And it's just wrong. It's wrong. It's a mischaracterization to just call a drug cartel you don't like terrorists. They don't have an ideological message. They're not trying to win a battle. They're trying to make money on drug profiteering, which can be dealt with, which can absolutely be dealt with through law enforcement and through other more economic and trade means to just make that not viable. But yeah, it's pathetic. And also, glazing all of this stuff about the border, when Greg Homan, who was appointed border czar, was credibly caught by the FBI taking a $50,000 cash bribe after the election, but before, the transition, like during the transition period before he got the job. Okay, he took a bribe to do something as border czar. I don't know. And then they got in office and they closed the case and dropped the investigation into him and then still gave him the job. So, corrupt border czar. He took a lot of money. That wasn't for nothing.
More legal authorities to do things in different ways. You take it out of just the pure law enforcement. He would say, and this is interesting because I know that your recent guest of yours, Ben.
He would say.
Rhodes had a different interpretation, but he would say that Iran continued to develop its nuclear weapons program. I mean, the Israelis would agree. He would point to evidence of
continue to develop its nuclear weapons program is being brought up a lot now, but because the word nuclear is scary. But I want people to keep in mind what that means, because that's a very broad and vague term. What does that mean? Because that could mean years and years of work. I don't know what the resources are like. I don't know what the infrastructure for moving those resources around looks like. I don't know what the science looks like. I don't know what the planning looks like for that. I don't know what the military involvement is like. I don't know what the timeline is like. Where's the imminent threat? If there's just a couple scientists in an office somewhere doing math on a whiteboard, does that count as the part of the process of developing their nuclear program? Because surely that is not an imminent threat. That is theorizing. That's just two nerds in a room. They're not in a position to hurt anybody. Like, it's a bizarre thing, right? If there is some ideological fear, and this would be like any country would reasonably debate this. Like, it's hard. Should we have nuclear weapon disarmament versus protecting, oneself just in case for retaliatory, like, guarantee mutually assured destruction? So ideally, you would have weapons, but you wouldn't use them because the whole point is no one can use them. 7 months ago, they demolished their capabilities for the next 10 years. So what was this about? But, if they're just in the ideological stage, like, debating it in any government body or even just, privately, I don't know, what do you think? Is it better for us to just not have weapons, or to have weapons just in case that we never plan to use, but the entire point of having them is no one can attack us because then we could attack them back, right? That's just a debate. You don't have anything. Does that count as part of developing the nuclear program? Because it starts with a thought, right? It starts with an idea. There's no evidence or guarantee of any of this. It's incredibly vague. It's incredibly inconsistent. It does not constitute the imminent threat they're using as an excuse to start an illegal war in Iran.
Over the years, and most recently, the past few weeks before the strikes, Iran's unwillingness to essentially agree to giving up that program. So I think he would say that things got worse in the 4 years he was out of office, and he had to...
Also, I don't know, what is the stance on, a right to defend oneself? A right to self-defense? Is that anything? Would we say that America has a right to self-defense? Would we say that you, as an individual, have a right to self-defense? Would they say that Israel has a right to self-defense? Would you say that, I don't know, some random country, Italy has a right to self-defense? Would you say that Norway has a right to self-defense? Would you say that Saudi Arabia has a right to self-defense? Would you say that Palestine has a right to self-defense? Would you say that Iran has a right to self-defense? It's complicated. And it's pretty bold to say the reasonableness for there not to be an imminent threat is they have to guarantee they're giving up any thoughts of ever pursuing any nuclear program, right? It's I don't know, telling someone, hey, will you just give up your Second Amendment rights forever? Because if not, well, you might get a gun and then shoot me, so you're an imminent threat and I'm going to go attack you.
Use different tools and different set of actions to move in a different direction.
What really happens when you post on Instagram? Are you just posting and hoping for the best?
Oh yeah. No, there's a whole mess of ways when you're dealing with any weaponry, and where do you draw that line between self-defense and homicide? Absolutely, it's hard. It's hard to study and enforce. You have to be very careful, and I think especially coming from conservatives, the line they're drawing here is uncharacteristically low compared to decades, an entire portfolio of their stated opinions and actions on weaponry, defense, and war. Which makes me suspect. Why the double standard?
I guess the thing that has been confusing or disturbing to me is that he was very clear coming in. You know, he said, we're tired of fighting. I'm the only president in the last 84 years that didn't start a war. He said, under Trump, we will have no more wars. He said that obviously Russia would have never invaded Ukraine if he had been in charge, that Hamas would have never launched the attack on Israel. He said at the beginning of this administration, we will measure our success not only by the battles we win, but also by the wars we end, and perhaps most importantly, the wars we never get into. And something feels like it has changed in him with his relationship to military force. I can't tell if he thinks he has found a way to use military force in a limited way that does not open up the kinds of dangers that previous presidents got into of escalation and occupation, although now he's talked about being more comfortable with boots on the ground in Iran if such a thing is needed. I guess to you, is this the same theory we were hearing from him, or and it's just being applied in a different way, or has something dramatically changed? Because Iran was not in a dramatically different place 2 weeks ago than it was 2 years ago. We were also told we'd obliterated their nuclear weapons program and the bombings.
True, within the past year, he took credit for obliterating all their nuclear capabilities. So are they lying then, or are they lying now? Who knows?
About, at least the past 50 years of history or more, 75 years, there's always a tendency to say, what is a doctrine? To look for perfect consistency, to look for an overarching architecture that fits all the time. I don't think any president can hold to that standard.
And that is whataboutism right there. That is excusing this and just saying, I don't know, other people do war sometimes too. It's inconsistent. But that is denying personal responsibility for this moment in history. You could still always be better, even if people in the past weren't as good. Also, Donald very specifically ran on this and talked a lot about it and wouldn't shut up about it. So this is false advertising and a direct betrayal of a direct promise made to a lot of stupid voters who voted for this stupidly.
We can talk specifically about Iran, but a lot of people would disagree and say that the Iranians, that there are a combination of factors that led the Israelis and the Americans to think that they had a window of opportunity that they needed to take now. And I think partly it was who...
What are these factors?
A sense that we needed to do more on the ballistic missile threat, taking out...
Okay, now it's about the ballistic missile threat. Notice how we've moved the goalposts from an imminent nuclear threat to they're working on a nuclear program, but not saying where they are in that process. Even though apparently everything was destroyed within the past year, so I don't know. So now it's, we need to do more about the ballistic missile threat. Not even there's an imminent ballistic missile threat.
More launchers. The fundamental goal was to remove Iran as a consistent terrorist power in the Middle East. Now, people.
So, which is it? Is it a nuclear threat? Is it a ballistic missile threat? Or is it a terrorist threat? And how does this attack, this time not on missiles, but on a room full of politicians, however awful they are, how does that stop a nuclear program, or a ballistic missile program, or a global terrorist network? These aren't connecting.
People won't agree with that. So I think because people don't agree with the rationale doesn't mean that there isn't a rationale. It's just one they don't agree with.
The problem is that there is no rationale. It's not that people are disagreeing with the rationale. It's that the rationale is not explaining the actions. The rationale is not explaining the actions. So it's not whether or not you agree with the rationale. It's they're not executing the rationale they said. And they've said 3 different rationales. None of them are the rationale that was pitched on the campaign trail that people voted for and has been held up to 2 months ago.
And the idea for years that Iran had been a threat since 1979, and if not, if you want to use 1983, the killing of...
Actually, they've been a threat since 1979 or 1983. Whatever. Pick your poison. It's not like it matters. It's not like it's actually based on a reason for anything. Epistemic anti-realism. The truth is whatever you want it to be. It's giving different contradictory ideas. We have nuclear threat. We have imminent nuclear threat. We have a general nuclear process. They have ballistic missiles, but there's not even a claim of an imminent threat with the ballistic missiles. We have, it's a global terrorist network. We have, actually, it's something that's been going on since 1983 and something that's been going on since 1979. Those are 6 different and contradictory reasons about what the threat is that action must be taken against. They cannot all be true.
Of the Marines, 241 Marines in Beirut, but I think it's actually really interesting because people are looking at the world in a different way, and so Ben would say, you know, the problems began with
And here we see that same kind of language, that epistemic anti-realism. People are looking at the world in a different way. But there are answers. There are answers. I think in the social media age, there was maybe some problems from people on the left too eagerly, without reading, to bring up what we consider to be postmodern ideas, and kind of reject modernism and rationalism and intellectualism in a way I think has backfired and done a lot of harm. But really, you do see what is actually substantially postmodernism appear more on the right, especially these days, where there's not some like grand proper system or authoritative way of looking at things. It is just kind of whatever you want it to be. It's just socially constructed. These things can coexist or exist in certain contexts or not in certain contexts. And as much as the right tries to rail on postmodernism because they just think it means Jews and women, this is actually kind of what it is. And I do think we should return a bit to, like, no, there are right answers and wrong answers. There are facts and lies. And that matters, actually.
Trump's withdrawal from the JCPOA, right? And
which is the nuclear deal the Obama
nuclear
administration
deal
had negotiated,
right,
which gave us more inspection and more
right, which aimed to
oversight.
give us more inspection and oversight. Ben's view was that the problem.
Okay, so now we're going to backpedal off of that same assertion she just put out because Obama did it. Right? There she's saying the threat is they withdrew from this thing. But no, Obama did it? Well, it didn't matter anyway, so like it doesn't matter, you know. So we're backing off of that one. So that's reason number 7, I believe.
Problems began when President Trump withdrew from this deal, and that led to the Iranians actually accelerating their nuclear program, whereas President Trump and many people in the first Trump administration argued, no, the Iranians weren't actually abiding by the deal fully. Inspections weren't allowed. There were many military facilities that did not allow inspections, and Iran's fundamental intentions hadn't changed. So these are different viewpoints. We're not going to come to agreement necessarily.
So is the deal good or bad? Should they have done more to enforce the deal? If they weren't abiding by the deal, why does it matter that they withdrew from the deal? Oh, we're not going to come to agreement necessarily. Okay, yeah, so it's just, fuck it. All opinions matter equally, I guess. The sky is blue, the sky is red. Who can tell, really? We're just gonna agree to disagree. These are thought-terminating cliches. And when American people, rightfully, angrily, across the political spectrum, want to know why American troops are dead, why American troops are injured by the dozens, why civilians, just young girls going to school, are dead and their school is destroyed. Why? What was this for? How does this help? What's the threat? What's the problem? So many Americans can really get on board with interventionism across the spectrum. Like, if there's a just cause, so many people can get on board with it. If there's a reason, right? If it's good versus evil. But that's not been shown. And there's just this grab bag of contradictory excuses. And she doesn't seem to care. It doesn't seem to matter to her what people believe or why they believe it. But what is the justification? She has no justification.
Really, because the assumptions behind them are different. And as you pointed out, Ezra, you know, we're beginning this conversation with a sense of different assumptions.
I agree we're beginning with different assumptions, but I think what I'm actually trying to understand is the assumptions from the Trump administration side. So you mentioned the national security.
Yeah, and she's just saying, oh, there's different reasons or whatever. And he is once again trying to say, yeah, it doesn't even matter if it's like you are right or wrong about it. What did the Trump administration believe? What was their philosophy? What was their logical cause and effect? Because we can debate that, but that would at least mean they did something for a reason, and no one right now knows the reason. Hey, Rex, thank you for the 5 lightnings. Didn't we cause 79? I don't know enough about that to comment at this time. I apologize. I don't know enough about late 20th century U.S. foreign policy in the Middle East. But probably could have been better. Let's see. Yeah, the whataboutism is their number one go-to. There's a lot of different excuses. They don't add up. But yeah, and these expectations here are what is going to actually kill the Republican Party where nothing else has. I hate to break it to you, but even the sexual assault and pedophilia and child abuse is not a deal breaker for a lot of people. They knew that going in. I've said this a lot, and I will keep saying it. People have a sense of expectations that they built, and it does not matter what those expectations are as long as they are fulfilled. They will be reasonably satisfied. If you know something is going to be bad, and then you see it and it's bad, you've made your peace with that, and you will be okay with the result. This can mean going to a bad restaurant, seeing a bad cheesy movie, downloading an app that looks bad, but you know what you're getting into, so you have informed consent to that idea. When something looks like it's going to be good, and it's good, you're cool with that. When something looks bad, and it turns out to be good, you're pleasantly surprised. That's why Trump is graded on a curve. If he does anything decent, they are thrilled for weeks. If something seems like it's going to be good, and then it's bad, and your expectations were failed, that's when people are furious and think something is terrible. That is the only time you can really hard fail. People have had more than enough time to acclimate to the mediocrity, to horrificness of anything in the Trump sphere. But being anti-war was a decent proposal that was decently substantiated and an expectation that was built for a long time now. And that expectation has been shattered over the past 2 weeks. And this is for something that people voted for just 1 year ago, and they still remember making an informed, confident decision, excusing all the violence and all the bigotry, because they thought at least, hey, this is good for foreign policy, and it means Americans will get economic relief instead of blowing time and money and lives on foreign wars. This is humiliating for them. This feels so bad for them. This feels like a betrayal for them. Because it is. That expectation has been shattered. And just because, by virtue of the fact that's the reason they chose and they had, and that has been the promise broken, that's why they care, and that's why this is such a bad idea. And the fact that they can't even get their story together and have a reason and a cause and an argument, which they should have done before doing anything, people are not on board with this. It feels like a grand betrayal. People are spiraling. They do not feel satisfied by an answer because one answer has not been provided to them. It's just, I don't know, figure it out, make up your own answer. We're not here to give you an explanation why. Feels like a deep betrayal. If they came out and all had their story together and had one clear reason and one clear argument, a lot of people would back this. It's just true. Like, the Middle East is so far away from America, even if it's based in lies, people could get on board with a narrative of good versus evil. Everything comes down to a sense of a narrative that can give you an emotionally satisfying justification for something. And they will build that expectation, and that gives themselves like enough of a reason that this is worth it. Even the ICE abuses, they're fine with, because the ICE abuses they thought were a cost, a prerequisite cost to having socialist policy to benefit American citizens. They just thought first we have to get rid of the people by any means necessary that would exploit the systems, and then we'll have like good stuff. But like it's a sense of like expectation and a cost. They've convinced themselves of something, even when it's a bullshit, horrible lie. This is a problem because there is no justification they've given to anyone. It's changing by the day. It's changing by the speaker. In this conversation alone, we've said we're going to war to stop an imminent nuclear threat, to stop a nuclear program they've not canceled entirely, to deal with ballistic missiles, to deal with a global terrorist thing. Actually, it started in 1983. Actually, it started in 1979. Actually, the threat started when they pulled out of a nuclear deal a couple years ago. Which is it? What is any voter, even the most loyal maggot, what are they supposed to tell themselves? How are they supposed to stand by this? How are they supposed to justify this to themselves and to their friends? They can't. That is going to fester.
Strategy in 2025. And so that document says the purpose of foreign policy is protection of core national interests. That is the sole focus of the strategy. So to you, what are America's core national interests when it comes to Iran?
I'd like to start by talking about the core national interests overall. Those core interests, when I articulate them this way, I think would be ones that President Biden would have agreed with and Obama. Why? Because all presidents want to protect the American homeland. All presidents want to grow American prosperity, economic growth, preserve peace through strength, meaning essentially have a strong...
Oh, there's the peace through strength line that they're going for now. And a lot of pundits and stuff, and people online, politicians on the news, and just people on Twitter are spreading this word, like, oh, peace through strength, or short-term pain for long-term gain. This will somehow bring about greater peace, and the low prices are coming, just trust me, bro. Eventually. It's just, we have to do this to get to that. That is still not a convincing argument. That's enough for some really stupid people who don't want to think about any details. But even that requires a pathway to get from here to there. What is that greater peace going to look like than the one we started with? What are those lower prices going to look like than the prices we started with? How is this going to be better than just having the Venezuelan oil that the United States stole a couple months ago? How is this going to do better than that? Is this necessary? Now the benchmark is you have to compare that short-term pain for long-term gain to what we started with. Was this worth it at all, right? We're indulging for a problem. We can't get back to just where we were. It has to be better than that. The problem and why this is working is short-term pain for long-term gain is another blank check to imagine the utopia future. And they can tell themselves, no matter how bad it is, no matter how long, maybe the other end of this could somehow be better than what we started with, but they're never going to define that because they can't. They cannot fulfill any promise they let you make yourself.
Military to deter and advance American influence. So I think those interests are actually kind of unchanging. It's in the interpretation of how you get to those interests. So obviously for President Trump, a key part of protecting the homeland was shut down the border, right? That was key to him. Build a missile defense system. And also in terms of preserving peace through strength. Strong military, but also deterrence. And part of deterrence, and I think part of what President Trump is doing now in his actions, or at least the effect of them, will be a seriously strengthened deterrent posture for the United States. No one is going to think that we're not going to act when we say we're going to act. I think
we're getting back to a lot of these speculations. I think he would. That's the problem. She's once again filling in the blanks by just making shit up. And this sense of deterrence is wrong because we didn't say we're going to do this. We didn't say we're going to do this. It's not a matter of the world thinks the U.S. makes empty threats. There was no threat. That's why this is bizarre. That's why this is illegal. There was no plan. There was no authorization from Congress. There was no threat stage, right? How long were negotiations?
He saw it as his mission to kind of restore red lines that had not been respected. When he,
I thought his mission was no new foreign wars. I thought his brand was taking credit for ending wars and not starting wars. What happened to that red line? Was that a red line? Was that important? If that wasn't important, and that red line could just easily be broken and dismissed and forgotten, why should anyone respect this red line or assume this red line won't be broken. It doesn't work as a red line if you're so flippant with your red lines all the time. No one can believe your words. It's a boy who cries wolf situation.
He had said it was about about 2 months ago that he was going to back the Iranian protesters, right? People were very upset because nothing then happened. I think that was in the back of his mind and did not go away, that he didn't want to be seen years later as criticized in the way that Obama was criticized for not backing the red line when Syria used chemical weapons against its own people. So I think that was always in the back of Trump's mind. I think he's sensitive to that.
So I think that to get to your point about how there's consensus on part of this, I think you will find a lot of consensus among Democrats and Republicans that it would be in the national interest of America for Iran not to have nuclear weapons. As you note, the Obama administration created the JCPOA. That was their version of trying to pursue that national interest. The fear many people have, the fear I have, is that when you engage in this kind of bombing campaign, when you kind of destroy the existing government, that what can come after it is very unpredictable, and it is outside America's national.
Okay, also she did just give another reason for this that is a little different and is not necessarily one or the other. It's not contradictory, but it's still, there's no evidence this was the reason from anyone else. She's just making up reasons and attributing them. Is that this idea of this was really just to send a message to the world stage. So a little terroristic by attacking Iran just to prove the general principle that you better listen to us when we say we're going to do something. Not a big concern or fear I have personally. Not something I think has been demonstrated as needs to be said or enforced beyond words, certainly. We have a lot of allies in the world stage. People don't mess around with America a lot. Even if Iran hates America and has had missiles for decades, notice, like, we haven't really been attacked by Iranian missiles. You don't fuck around with the United States. Like, that's kind of already known. But that's another reason. I don't know. It was just to send a message to the world stage.
National interest to have responsibility.
That's what, reason 8 now?
For an Iran that has descended into civil war, an Iran that might have spaces where terrorist groups are now being formed, and an Iran that has created a refugee crisis throughout the Middle East. And it isn't clear to me how much planning they've done for that. It isn't clear to me that they have, it's clear to me that they have not prepared the American people for an extended commitment to that. I think the surprise many people have had is the sense that Trump, Vance, that other people in that national security team had become very skeptical of what America could achieve through force in countries we did not understand, in countries that were not near us, and in countries where we could get bogged down for very long periods of time. Afghanistan, we were there for decades and ended up handing it back to the Taliban.
I don't know how this will be characterized politically, but I think the withdrawal from Afghanistan was a tragedy. The Taliban are huge pieces of shit. I don't believe in a hell, but they should burn there. If you care about human rights at all, if you care about women's rights at all, Afghanistan is one of the worst places in the world now. And I don't solely fault that on any one president. I know it was expensive and we weren't really getting anywhere. It did require strength from the Afghanistan government we were backing and supported, and they just folded and fled. That was unforgivable weakness. But women and girls pay the price every day in Afghanistan. I think it's about it. Like, I could be bought into an argument for interventionism there. Yeah, it's bad. It's like a whole Handmaid's Tale. I don't know what to do about that. It can't require militaristic intervention alone. It requires more, but it's sad. Ooh, this is a really good comment. I want to talk about this. I'll make this a little segment. Okay, Salamander Sapien 3034 says, peace through strength, no new wars, DEI, build the wall, clean CR, short-term pain, long-term gain. It's always 3-syllable phrases, so intentional. This is absolutely true. If there's one thing Donald Trump is good at, it's this. It's marketing for the lowest common denominator. Like with anything like education and like brain development, it's a pyramid, right? Everyone starts at the bottom. If you're lucky and you have the right circumstances, you can kind of go up and get to the top. You get more, like, on the left, they would call this privileged. On the right, they'd call this blessed. If you have money, if you have opportunity, if you get to go to a good school. Sometimes that's hard work. Sometimes it's just the opportunities and the doors that are open to you. If you get a good job. If you have good nutrition, or if you live in like a food desert and you just get like fast food, it can help your brain develop and you can learn more stuff. If you have more time, if you don't have to work all day at the fast food restaurant, you have more time to follow the news, you can learn more and be exposed to more stuff. So the lowest common denominator ideas and expressions are going to reach the furthest. This is memetics. Yes, it's like when you watch a children's show, but it works. Yes. Not all Americans could, like, sit through, have the patience or interest or capability to sit through, like, a whole fucking Ezra Klein show podcast, let alone understand it. And this is a huge Achilles heel of the Democratic Party. Right now under Chuck Schumer, who has pushed this idea that we could, like, realign things, so to be educated, to have a college degree, could open middle-class doors, and you could firmly be a Democrat, and you understand how those policies help you, and lock down those voter blocks, which seem to sway elections because those informed voters voted in lots of elections. The problem is, Donald Trump was the first person to really start trying effectively. Sarah Palin prototyped this. Reach out to people who don't have a lot of time, who don't like big complicated ideas, and just want a vibe. It's simpler. Memetically, in a social media environment, in a new media environment, in an alternative media environment, and even, yes, the news and TV, to the extent that still exists. Those little basic ideas, at a low reading level, reach more people you never could. Part of why Donald Trump wins in ways that baffle every pollster is there's a special voter bloc that only shows up for Donald Trump. In a general election, they'll put his name on president, leave the rest blank. These people don't vote in midterms. They might not have ever voted before. They may not ever vote after this. But they vote for him. These are the mega uninformed voters. These are the ride or die, proudly uninformed voters. These are the people who do not read any policy platforms, do not care what the policies are. They do not watch the news. They are not even really active on social media, politically or otherwise, but they vote for Donald Trump because these short phrases reach them. And they are satisfying to these people, and that's enough. And informational efficiency in the attention economy, packaging ideas in packets that can spread better, is crucial and so overlooked. Build the wall. Very simple. It's 3 syllables, 3 simple words everyone knows at like a kindergarten reading level. The amount of people you can reach, they don't have to agree with you, but your target audience, like blasting out like even an ad on social media, you pay for like how many impressions you want this to get, is huge. It's maximized. It's a simple baby brain, concrete, you can wrap your head around it, pitch. Not everyone has to agree with it, but the amount of people you could reach who could engage with that idea and might agree with it is objectively bigger than anything else. A big problem of the Kamala Harris campaign, which is not solely her fault, part of it is the ill will of the voters. Part of it is the ill will of Washington insiders who did not fully support her, who kind of sabotaged her in back doors, who maybe wanted someone else or were too ambitious and didn't think it was a big deal. Kamala Harris was not given the opportunity to define herself clearly. Trump just wrote an implicit, like, you don't like what's there now, I'm the alternative. He didn't even have to say that. That was just a freebie, intuitive idea that, like, everyone got. Kamala Harris had good ideas that would be good for the economy and good for most people. Things like a better child tax credit than the Republicans offered. Things like helping first-time homeowners buy a house, some money to put towards that. These are smart ideas, but they're not as intuitive as build the wall, as a shortcut for, oh, he's going to help the economy by getting rid of the competition. Even saying that he's going to help the economy by getting rid of the competition is big. It's complicated. But just build the wall can reach you. And even the meaning behind that, whether you'd like it for racist reasons or your own personal economic reasons or your own personal fear of crime reasons, can reach you. And whichever reasons you have that matter to you, you can fill in yourself. Whereas if we just said, even like, but aren't you scared of criminals from somewhere else? Not everyone is. But build the wall reaches like those three different groups with one single phrase. And everyone can read into it what they want. It's like the most efficient way to package a policy that we have. The problem with a lot of leftists is they think Democrats don't care and don't have any good ideas. And you ask them why, they will say things like Medicare for all or free Palestine. Medicare for all is 5 syllables, 3 words. Free Palestine is 2 words. Free Palestine, 4 syllables. These are succinct. There has not been an alternative. And I really worry the danger is a lot of establishment Democrats who are just insulated by consultants and polls and out of touch will look at the polls and see approval on different issues and change their stances in their policy positions, but don't have any way to market those ideas or to communicate those ideas. So a lot of people don't understand those ideas existed or changed whatsoever. And I'm really worried that a lot of Democrats are going to start to give up on things like trans and non-binary rights because they just don't understand why people were against them in the first place and can't connect. So then like their policy platforms, even if people vote for them for other reasons, will happen to be worse on trans rights, but haven't specified why. And like changing anything at that like detailed policy level isn't going to move the needle at all to people who don't read about policy. Don't come was pretty catchy. No New Wars connects. DEI connects. DEI also is not about DEI policies, which have been in place for years and are very boring and statistically informed and sociologically informed and don't really matter or make an impact to most people anyway. If they're not for you, you don't have to care about them. It just helps counteract the biases towards tall white men named John that just statistically appears in fields when you don't like account for that. Like I went to college, there was like little departments where like, hey, if someone like was shitty to you because you're a woman or because you're LGBT or because of your race or because of your religion, you can just go there and like, you know, they have support resources. Sometimes it's just a person to talk to. Sometimes you can file a report. It's just in case thing. Like it's out of the way on a campus. It's somewhere private and like nice, you know. But when Republicans said DEI, that's 3 letters. They got real efficient with that one. It was a simplification of political correctness. It was a simplification of a big idea with 3 letters. What they conveyed was that intuitive bias you have but haven't really analyzed, that some people, like, you don't like them, you don't trust them, you feel like it should have been you, you're jealous, you're angry, you feel excluded or alienated in any way from any group or organization you've been a part of. DEI resonates with you. If you are racist or sexist or homophobic or Islamophobic or anti-Semitic or whatever the fuck else, that resonates with you. If you have a job, your life is fine, you feel like you're working hard, but you're not rich yet, your life is hard day to day, DEI resonates with you because it implies other people are getting to live those privileged or blessed or lucky lives that otherwise maybe somehow you could have had if they didn't give it to someone who was a different color than you. Right? So it's that like weird envy, even when it's baseless. Just saying DEI intuitively hit all of those things. Yes, they're excited for illusions of solutions rather than actual solutions because it's marketing. It's marketing in a new media environment. What Donald Trump understood decades before other people is this marketing. That's how you get ahead in new media. That's how you create an impression of yourself. It's really about that feeling. How many times, especially as a little kid maybe, you've seen a commercial that preyed on a feeling? Usually excitement, or to be cool, or to be beautiful, or pretty, or to be included and popular. That's where a lot of marketing starts, that feeling, that idea. And then whether it's a toy or a snack or a game, or clothes or accessories or makeup, they put forward these products as a means to that end. They start with that feeling, and the product, which is usually just some cheap plastic crap, is put then in that hole that they've created in your heart. That's how Donald Trump runs a campaign. And that's why it works. And Kamala Harris didn't do that. Kamala Harris didn't start with that feeling. Kamala Harris's campaign, to the extent she was able to have one, which she really didn't get a chance to say much because of the time frame, it didn't offer that. And she did offer help to the middle class, but she just presented those policy positions. She didn't start with, economically, your world could be better, and I want to take you further than Joe Biden did. That's the pitch. That's what you needed. Because Donald Trump was then running as an outsider against an incumbent, effectively, he didn't even have to say that, but that's what he did. Just, it's not good enough. The prices are too high. Like, they just got that for free, because any outsider always gets that for free. But yeah, it's just that feeling. It's just marketing. It's just marketing. It always has been. Always will be. Yes, leftists will throw out terms like APAC, corporate dem, consultant class, donor class, centrist, even, I will add one in, dark money as proxies, but that's considerably more complex than the three-syllable thing. Yes. And the problem with that is a lot of the far leftists, whether they know it or not, are inheriting that. They're getting bolstered by outside sources, like Groypers. Groypers and Russian misinformation campaigns both have different incentives to push organically and synthetically. Like, they do push bots, especially on like TikTok and Instagram, I've noticed this, to get ahead. They will promote those messages because they just like target it on just this weird distrust. But that feeling there of all those terms is still that distrust of institutions. Really, institutions aren't doing enough. That can quickly turn sour into you can't trust women, or the Jews a lot of the time, or like black people bad. It's just stupid. Yeah, Taylor Lorenz did this, and at the time that she started speaking out against chorus before, it was clear she, on a personal level, felt socially excluded from other people who happened to be in chorus and didn't like her. It was her own petty shit. But Taylor Lorenz, a registered Republican who went to the Trump inauguration party and is friendly with conservatives and is always skeptical of people on the left, started trashing chorus in unsubstantiated ways and opened up a new Gamergate style rift of distrust towards women, people of color, and especially women of color who advocate for voting or help or any meaningful change in practice. There's a horrible misinterpretation and implication of the term dark money and what it means. Dark money doesn't have to be disclosed. Do you know the reason for that? It's because, I forget the specifics, but to my memory, in the Deep South, a long time ago, people who would donate to the NAACP, the state governments were trying to request their records. How dangerous is that? So you could just be like, even just a white ally who wanted to support African American civil rights, and then you get added to like the list of people the government was like hunting, like basically. And it was like, oh, this is scary. This is like some bad like government overreach implications. Bad people are trying to use this information. What if you could do it without having your information known? Like you could, keep that privacy. And more people are willing to support socially progressive causes, especially in unfriendly environments, when they have that discretion. And then those organizations full of like the bravest people can help materially improve conditions for people with the materially worst conditions, with the most unfair bullshit discrimination they face day to day. A lot of Black Americans were in danger and are in danger. A lot of women were in danger and are in danger. These days, transgender and non-binary people are targeted super, super, super hard. Would you be more or less willing, or equally willing, to support trans rights, especially in a red state, if the government would hunt you too, if they knew about it. Like, it's just, it's good to have the option. That's discretion. So it's just, unlike just nonprofits, if is it 501c3, 501c4, there's like different, like, just legal ways you can like register nonprofits that allow you legally to do and not do different types of advocacy, like using that money. It's just like ethical concerns, it's boring, it's legislative, it's bureaucratic. And just categorically, a lot of nonprofits are set up in a way where technically it all counts as dark money. Because like you just have that right to do it privately, to donate privately. That's it. That's all it is. And a lot of these organizations are like perfectly mundane and good, actually. And course creators, of course, are talking about Palestinian rights. Of course, like this is documented, this is known. But Taylor Lorenz lied and let this implication around dark money gave a lot of ammo to a lot of white leftists who would see any advocacy for voting, especially coming from any woman or a person of color or woman of color, and then say like, oh, you're like a dark money person, even if they weren't a chorus creator. Like, I've received some of that. Like, it's just weird. It's just a lot of weird hate, and it's like not only is it an excuse to harass and attack people, it's an excuse to discredit people and never listen to them in the first place. So like they don't get to defend themselves in this sort of court of public opinion. I mean, and it's so damaging. Gamergate was like this towards women. This is like the whole thing of like, oh, you're just like a woman gamer. You must be like just paid by journalist companies or whatever. Like, you're a paid journalist. I'm not going to trust you. You're a woman. You must be like fake. You must be a plant. And it's just writing them off. And then like, so not only could you get harassed, you can't defend yourself. No one will trust you or believe you. Yeah, dark money is just any donation to a 501c4. Is dark money. Anyone who gets money from a 501c4. There's a lot of nonprofits. That's just how they happen to work. Oh, you're getting dark money. There's also, the microaggression implications of dark money being used to slander, like, black people, people of color. Yeah, so Taylor Lorenz is not a credible source on that. She's been fired before. Yeah, so dark money is incredibly mundane. It's incredibly normal. Anyone who's like even adjacent to any like actual advocacy or government or political work should know that. Taylor Lorenz herself benefits from dark money. Like, I believe Taylor Lorenz got paid by an LLC. That LLC was created, for a specific technical legal purpose to be able to do certain types of things. That was funded by by dark money from a 501c4 by the same people. Like, they just set up different like branches and wings and just follow the legal process. There's nothing wrong with her taking that money. And I wish you to extend the same reasonable charity to all of the progressive women of color she hurt. Like, lasting damages to their reputations, to their ability to act, to their ability to, frankly, be advocates and afford to live. Because she's a journalist, it's impossible for her to be corrupted by dark money, yeah. Just lies. Like, just huge obfuscation. Yeah, so it's just distrustful, and it's slanderous. Like, it's damaging. Is it slander or libel? There's a difference. It has to do with the medium, other stuff. I don't know. But, she hurt people. She made life harder for a lot of people. And she's not taking responsibility for that. I believe she did it for petty reasons, but she has failed to consider and rectify the consequences of her actions. And she owes a lot of people an apology. Yeah, no one would hire her. Her arguments are, yeah, just like, she mean, at least some people wouldn't hire her. Should we watch that? Do you have a link? Do you have a link to like a conversation? Like, clip to when it starts and ends. We could totally watch that now. But it's these little things that like really add up. Of like, who are you examining for dark money? And what's the threshold? And why is that necessarily a bad thing? And it's like a lot of, oh yeah, the lefty hit pieces against Gavin Newsom. Okay, so here's the thing. Here's why the lefty hit pieces against Gavin Newsom are sus. All of these people, all these leftists, right? Like in the current climate, why is hating Gavin Newsom your priority? Is there anything else you want to speak out against? ICE? For starters? Pete Hegseth, Kash Patel, Carolyn Levitt, Pam Bondi, Stephen Miller, J.D. Vance, Peter Thiel, Donald Trump, Benjamin Netanyahu. These are just some names on the top of my head. Really, Trump's chief of staff is one to look out for. She's like an older lady who organizes things and keeps them in line. And she enables him to do whatever he wants and gets everyone else in line for him. It's like she's like the ringmaster. Stephen Miller is the evil one with all the ideas, and he's like running the policy shop. Donald Trump's chief of staff is the enabler. Get rid of those two and things will be better. Susie Wiles, yes. Susie Wiles is dangerous because she's like Trump's mommy figure. Trump, weirdly enough, as sexist as he is, in other ways is oddly respectful of women. Like Trump was asked before if he ran for president and who he wanted his VP to be. He said Oprah. He wanted Kristi Noem to be his VP this time. And his chief of staff, Susie Wiles, he listens to and respects. And she's like one of the only people who can talk him down and keep him reasonable and stop the chaos of the first term. Very, very bizarre behavior. But, you know, he has like a mommy thing, I guess. Plenty of people do. But when Donald Trump is in a room with other men, he has to feel he's like in charge and can do whatever he wants. The only people who can talk him down are women. If a man challenges him, he fires them. Yeah, so like those are important priorities. Those I think are the top priorities. A lot of lefties are hating on Gavin Newsom very ignorantly. It's promoted by a lot of bots. It's promoted by a lot of really naive idiots who are closet bigots or just self-destructive or sabotorial or so privileged this isn't real to them and doesn't matter. I have not seen really any substantial valid criticism for Gavin Newsom. I have brought my own, which I actually heard from, no, it's not my own actually, from some conservatives. Gavin Newsom is coastal elite coded. That's how he reads to people, which makes him an inauthentic sell for the rising needs of the moment and the winning election strategy for either party. Be the person who speaks best to lower the cost of living. Gavin Newsom, as someone from California, will have a tough sell on that. Gavin Newsom's strategy instead would have to rely on selling hypermasculinity and being the daddy to J.D. Vance's little boy. But yeah, no, with Gavin Newsom, it's like really bad. They say Gavin Newsom is bad on trans rights. Let's look into that actually. It's gonna be very informal. I would like to maybe do a more formal video essay on this at some point. Okay, I'm finding some articles on this. Let's see. Do. All right, I have an article on Gavin Newsom's like legal record on LGBT rights. This is just from this session. So, yeah, October 22nd, 2025. I don't know enough about Mark Kelly. He does not have a lot of charisma when he speaks, which may be important. A lot of theoretical Democrat frontrunners just don't have the riz, which is a problem. Andy Bashir is another one. Andy Bashir would be my top pick for candidate, but he has to want it more, and he has to be more confident about talking. If we could just turn Andy Bashir, the Democratic governor of Kentucky, who protects trans youth by citing his experience as a pastor, we would be golden. But alas. So if you've been on the internet in the past year, you've probably seen a lot of people say that Gavin Newsom abandons LGBT rights or abandons trans people. I want to take a look at this. What do you actually know about Gavin Newsom? What has he actually done for and against trans people and the LGBT community more broadly? Let's take a look at what Gavin Newsom has spent his time actually doing. Because I think a lot of people have a wrong idea about him. An idea convenient to the people who hate trans people most of all, the radical right. And maybe, at least in part, there are attempts to sabotage useful actors to protect LGBT rights so that worst fascist actors can instead destroy all of us. This is from KQED, tracking Newsom's record on pro-LGBTQ plus laws signed and vetoed this session as of October 22nd, 2025. This is from late last year at the time of recording. And here are some of the bills he's passed. Let's see. Some people have questioned his commitment to queer and transgender constituents. On a podcast, we'll look at the whole episode some other time. In a conversation with Charlie Kirk, Newsom called it, quote, deeply unfair to allow transgender athletes to participate in girls' sports. Transgender participation in girls' sports is complicated. Obviously, transgender men have no place in women's sports because they are men. Transgender men take testosterone and are very strong fuckboys who can probably beat a woman in a fight. And I don't think it's a good idea. Transgender women in women's sports, reasonable. It depends on the sport, on the extent of medical transition, and we can study these things. Really, a sensible policy is sport by sport, respectful in the language regardless. Maybe changing the name of men's and women's divisions into something else, like a heavyweight versus lightweight kind of thing. But yeah, and I think it would surprise a lot of people if they looked into it, how often it's totally fine for a trans woman, especially if you've transitioned for a while hormonally, to participate in women's sports, because testosterone is where a lot of advantage lies. But I don't necessarily expect a layperson to do that. And intuitively, if you've heard nothing, a lot of people fall into this idea that trans women in women's sports are unfair. This is the boat that Gavin Newsom is in. I wish he learned more about this topic. But I don't think that necessarily signifies an abandonment of trans people. Let's look at some of the bills he has passed. Evan Lowe, former assembly member and CEO of the LGBTQ+ Victory Fund, a political PAC promoting LGBTQ+ progressives, says Newsom is still a staunch ally of the community, one who helped secure marriage equality in the state, as well as civil rights protections for adoption, hospital visitation, and the workplace. He has that track record and that history, and that should not be lost on members of the community, Lowe said. All of these things happened because we were able to build bridges and build coalitions versus that of an overly simplistic polarization of infighting. So, what was Newsom's record in the latest legislative update? I believe this is just from 2025. AB 82. This is all legislation he signed. This law expands current privacy protections for reproductive health care providers and patients to also include gender-affirming healthcare providers and patients. California won't assist other states in investigating patients or doctors for providing reproductive health care like abortion or gender-affirming care. That is way it's not only helping LGBTQ plus Californians in California, where he has the power, but California will not cooperate with the legal transphobia and misogyny, anti-abortion, hunting of patients within California. So not aiding other states as they corrode women's rights and LGBTQ plus rights. AB 678. This new law makes a change to a group that recommends solutions to homelessness to the state government. The Interagency Council on Homelessness now must provide with representatives from LGBTQ plus communities to better serve queer people experiencing homelessness. So he's helping queer homeless people. They can get respectful in-group representation in council. AB 727, an existing law which went into effect this summer, requires schools to print the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline on student ID cards for grades 7 and up. This law will expand that rule to include the phone number and text line for the LGBTQ plus suicide prevention hotline from the Trevor Project. This will help LGBTQ plus kids and teens who may be in a not great spot, whether that's bullying from school or abuse at home, if they're in a position where they're considering self-harm. I think that's good. That will reduce that and keep them safe and keep them alive into adulthood. So that's protecting LGBTQ plus youth specifically. AB 822. This new law extends the Commission on the State of Hate for an additional 4 years. It is intended to help state agencies, law enforcement, and the public stay informed about hate crime trends. This will help against the broader trend of hate crimes towards transgender and LGBTQ plus people. AB 1084. The law makes the process of changing legal documents, name, gender, or sex identifier, faster and less burdensome, especially for adults. For minors who want to change their name or gender marker on their birth certificate or ID, as long as all living parents sign forms, there doesn't need to be a hearing to approve it. Having to go through a hearing is a huge pain in the ass. That's still the case in some states. This puts California very ahead of the curve and allows updating this information not only for adults but also for children. AB 1487. The bill renames a fund that offers grants for programs aimed at improving healthcare access for gender nonconforming people. It also broadens its scope to serve younger people and immigrants. Awesome. That's intersectional LGBTQ plus aid. SB 59. This means that when someone files a legal petition to change their name or their gender marker on an official document in California, the court records are kept confidential. Previously, those protections applied only to minors, but this law immediately extends them with the goal of minimizing the risk that court records could be used to out someone. That's pretty great. SB 278. The bill allows healthcare providers to share some anonymized HIV test results without written consent. The administrators of Medi-Cal plans say they need the data in order to identify gaps in care. Patients can opt out. Okay, so it's anonymized, so it still keeps people private from using their personal information. They can opt out if they don't want that even anonymized to go out. But it does allow people, the administrators of Medi-Cal, to better analyze HIV medical care and where there are gaps in that care. So this is like who is underrepresented, what are those silent and forgotten people in our peripheral vision who are suffering from HIV, and how can we better like reach them and see where they are and with demographics, and how can we reach them with care. SB 450, the law protects adoption rights for LGBTQ plus parents. It means LGBTQ plus adoptive parents who leave California for a state with less inclusive adoption laws won't lose their parental rights to children born in California. Awesome. That's another way, as governor of California, he can try to help and protect people on the national level. SB 497. The law bans healthcare providers from disclosing medical records related to gender-affirming care services in response to civil or criminal actions under other states' laws. Again, this is protecting LGBTQ plus people, especially trans people, from other states' increasingly transphobic laws, to the extent that he's able as governor of California. SB 504 aims to improve how quickly HIV cases are tracked and treated in California by allowing healthcare providers to share identifying information about a person with HIV with local public health agencies when necessary to connect the person with care. It still limits who can access this information and specifies when sharing the information is actually necessary. Good. HIV is tricky. It's a horrible disease. Luckily, there have been lots of medical advancements that disproportionately affects the LGBT community and people in poverty. It's a big point of danger and shame because being known to have HIV could subject you to hate crimes, and social ostracization. So it's important to make sure people get care and don't, especially the subject is like toxic masculinity, will like withdraw and not let anyone know there's a problem. It's a careful thing to deal with. It requires respect and privacy, but we need to make sure people are getting help and not just withdrawing and necessarily hiding from it. They have some right to do that, but it's good to be able to get people help when they need it and to understand this problem, which people can be very quiet about, but can absolutely like dominate and ruin lives. So this protects the lives of LGBTQ plus people especially. SB 590 expands existing laws around paid family leave to include chosen family members. That means LGBTQ plus people can designate a non-blood related person to be considered a family member, so they can receive benefits while caring for that person. That's awesome. Like found family, complicated situations, affects lots of people. I think that's great. Yeah. What bills did Newsom veto? Newsom vetoed 2 notable healthcare access bills, including one, SB 418, which would have offered an additional safeguard for people who receive hormone therapy to access treatments without disruption amid federal attacks on gender-affirming care. Quote, at a time when transgender people are being singled out for targeted discrimination, removal of their health care, and denial of their existence, it is heartbreaking that this bill be vetoed, said State Senator Carolyn Minjvar, Democrat from San Fernando, who wrote the bill in a statement. SB 418 was the most tangible and effective legislation tool introduced this year to help transgender, gender diverse, and intersex folks weather this political storm. In Newsom's veto statement, he said he supported the intent of protecting access to treatment, but thought the bill risked raising already high health insurance premiums. Craig Pulsifer, legislative director for Equality California, a co-sponsor of both vetoed bills, pushed back against the governor's answer. The data and analysis on this bill shows that the impact on health insurance premiums would be negligible, Pulsifer said. The governor's decision leaves trans Californians and many others who rely on hormone therapy vulnerable to treatment disruptions at a time when they are facing really extreme attacks from the federal government. This is a bill that should be reintroduced and pushed through. He was wrong on that one. Do it again. If there's a cost issue, alter the bill, reform it, get it done. If you want a valid criticism of Gavin Newsom not standing with the transgender community, this was a case where he prioritized budget concerns over health care guarantees. That's a call he made, and it's a bad one. Newsom rejected AB 554 for a similar reason. It would have required most private health plans in California to cover antiretroviral drugs, devices, or products like PrEP without delays in access caused by plans requiring prior authorization, step therapy, or cost sharing. Medi-Cal managed plans would have been exempt, but in his veto message, Newsom raised concerns about the increased cost to health plans under cost-sharing provisions in the Affordable Care Act. We've seen many attacks from the Trump administration, including from the U.S. Health Secretary RFK Jr., threatening to fire members of a federal body that makes recommendations around preventative health care, Pulsifer said. We are extremely concerned about the impact of this action in California on access to PrEP, which is a really important medication to prevent HIV. Pulsifer said he plans to address the governor's concerns and reintroduce both bills next legislative session. Awesome. This is how government's supposed to work, right? If a bill's not good enough, it doesn't necessarily mean it's the end. There are legislative sessions like every year, right? And Congress is usually only in session for some of the year because that's just when they do all the votes on the bills back to back to back to back. Most of the year, they spend researching, writing the bills, talking with different groups, figuring out what the bill should be, and they get them ready, and even, like, they're talking about, hey, will you vote for this? And they figure that all out. So that way, they're not wasting time in the session when they all come together just to vote on stuff. And sometimes bills do take a few passes to adapt. So there will be some changes, probably not major, but I don't know. I don't have reason to believe he would continue to veto those. He gave a specific reason. It would raise healthcare costs for like a broader population. Is there a way that can be managed or mitigated? I think so. I'm curious what that would be. If anyone wants to look into that more and get back to me, like, I'd love to hear it. I'm curious what the modifications will be. But I think there's a way to do both. And I don't know. I don't see any reason why that wouldn't be supported by Newsom or whoever replaces him, depending on when that happens. But yeah. 2 healthcare bills. One for gender-affirming care, one for PrEP, which is for HIV, that require another go-around. I hope we'll pass them next time, and I would happily support any targeted push to like put that pressure on Newsom. Absolutely warranted and welcome. That's like constructive, actually helps trans people. This general hatred over something he said on a podcast about sports, like very casually, not helpful. So that's Newsom's record on LGBT rights. A lot of stuff that helps like legal protections, including from other states that would try to be transphobic or out people, or prevent people from getting care, or try to interfere with your adopted family or your chosen family. Pretty good. This is all just this year, or last year, like October. 2025. So all like within the past year. Pretty good stuff, I think. Let's see. So that's that. Oh, would I have any advice to Gavin Newsom on his culturally normal comment? Here, we're gonna switch to full screen. Make this clip. Do I have any advice for Newsom on his culturally normal comment? The Democrats to be more culturally normal. I think that's a good comment, and I say that being fully supportive of transgender and non-binary rights and any other cause, because people are people. Yeah, it's a pretty good comment. A big issue the Democrats have is in presentation. There is some misattribution of fault there. A big point that's driven a lot of Democrat shame and pivots in the past year is a late-stage closing message Republican ad in the 2024 election season that Kamala is for they, them, Trump is for you. A lot of that is misattributed to saying people don't like trans rights. First, I think there's a misinterpretation in that ad. The point is a lot of people, a lot of voters, especially blue-collar voters, especially independents who have voted for Trump, but may have even flip-flopped back and forth, aren't very political and are very just self-interested. It's very direct. They're not thinking about any bigger ideologies. A big pain point that demographic had was the cost of living for them personally. Because Kamala Harris had a very short campaign targeting middle-class informed voters on specific issues, especially first-time homeowners and people starting a family, they did not get a clear image of what Kamala Harris's brand or message or vision was. They didn't get the pitch. They didn't get a vibe from her. They did get one from Trump. And so they felt, I am suffering personally, and I don't know who she is. I hear stuff about LGBT rights, though. It was a lot of conservatives peddling that, actually. Kamala didn't really, talk about non-binary people or be, cringe on LGBT rights. Really. That was not in her messaging. That was people talking about her. But that's what they heard. So they thought, okay, they don't understand what Kamala could do for themselves personally. She's talking about LGBT stuff. Meanwhile, I can't afford the grocery store. And it's that, connection of ideas. And the same could be applied to Trump. Donald is for a legal war in Iran because Israel asked him to. Well, Democrats are trying to stop ICE killing your neighbors. Well, Democrats are worried about the cost of living. The Republicans are protecting the Epstein elite while Democrats want you to afford healthcare. It's that, you have to connect those two parts. They're doing that instead of protecting you, instead of putting you first. That's what resonated with people. But people heard the they, them part and freaked out. A lot of the negative cringe messaging that is culturally abnormal around topics like LGBT rights isn't coming from establishment Democrats. It's coming from cringe, random, lefties on Twitter that people cherry pick. And I wish more people were self-aware about how they come off, especially to outsiders. It was very 2015. Anti-SJWs would harvest so many examples of people taking good cause, I care about feminism, and then embarrassing themselves in a way that reflected not only badly on themselves personally, but on women and feminist causes. And that refusal to be realistic about the game and the environment we're playing in and represent these causes to an out group in a way where you look sane had negative ramifications. I think it's selfish, especially when you represent yourself as an advocate for other groups, to not consider how you come off to outsiders who are holding those groups in danger. That is a game that has to be played. Gay marriage was won not by I'm gonna be naked in the street and paint myself rainbow colors and be kill the government, right? Gay marriage, it was able to onboard lots of people, and the approval ratings generally over time, over a very long period of time, by putting forward here's just a dorky guy in a polo shirt who's hello, I want a husband, and then that it calmed down the Neanderthal that is the undecided median voter in America. And I feel we lost that onboarding. We lost that cultural moment, and we had more of a monoculture where we could understand where other people were at. Even old TV shows and media, it was a very common plot line you even see in stuff like The Simpsons. Where are people at? There was a Simpsons episode where Homer was homophobic, and then he met a gay person, and then he started out scared, and they showed that. And then okay, he learned gradually through firsthand experience, oh, you're normal, you're a good person actually, and the people who are against you are bad, and that's just, they're not accurate to say you're bad. And like creating space for that and bringing people on board is an important part of the step. In the modern social media environment, you can quickly get railroaded and pocketed into a dimension where either like LGBT people are super normal, you see them all the time, or it's this pure theory. You're surrounded only by white racists and sexists and homophobes and transphobes and envyphobes who have not met an LGBT person. They voraciously consume pornography about LGBT people, but they don't say that during the day. And we just need to like, just onboarding, that's all. Put your best foot forward, be a little self-aware, be a little patient, like, and I think it's pretty easy to onboard a lot of people to like anything if you just start at step 1. We start at step 3, and a big problem on the left is a lot of people just say like, oh, that's a skill issue. It's not my job to educate you. You should just understand. But if you take like someone like on the right, they have literally no reason in the exposure of their life experience to understand, unless they take the initiative randomly for no particular reason at all one day to say, I decided I'm going to understand and respect transgender rights, to then like do like hours of research. It's never going to occur to them. College is a place where a lot of this happens because you typically have like a sociology requirement. You know, you have enough required classes that you get to know different people in your classes who are not from your same small town and your same community. So you'll just naturally gain that exposure. You'll like make some friends who look different than you, and you'll like, oh, they're cool people. Breaking out of your comfort zone. But like we take that for granted because not everyone has that. And it's just understanding like we haven't given people a reason to understand. It's like, so culturally normal, I don't want to cede what's normal. We have not proven what's normal. We have not proven what's real. And we need to prove that again. We need to be involved in those conversations. I think a lot of leftists especially draw hard lines. I'm never going to engage, don't platform anyone, don't talk to anyone outside of your circles. That's a problem because you've ceded the zone. You've ceded the space of what's normal in mainstream in society. You've made yourself unavailable to normalcy. You decided, I don't want to be normal. I want to be the most special person in the world. And it's like, okay, you can do that. But like your 5 friends on Discord are the only people you are able to talk to and show yourself to. And then you're going to fail if you expect nationally everyone to understand you and vote in support of you. And that sucks. I wish they did. Like, I wish they knew. But like, they've not caught up. You haven't, I don't know. It needs a little more empathy. And it's not hard to do. It sounds hard. It sounds frustrating. Not everyone has to do that. Not everyone has to like educate people. But eventually some people have to reach out. Some people have to workshop messaging. And the problem with that is on the right, you have all these big like think tanks and like weird, horrible groups funded by horrible people who specifically workshop positioning and messaging on those positions on social issues. And with trans stuff especially, they had like decades of a head start because they recycled everything they've said about black people in society, in civil rights from Jim Crow, in bathrooms, in water fountains, in sports, and then about gay people in the military, and adopting and marriage. They've recycled those culture war issues to have a head start on like anti-trans messaging because they hate you and they don't give a shit. Like they think you're stupid, and a lot of people are. So they're just literally recycling talking points they made up for other stuff. But to people who don't know a trans person, that's the first and only thing they're hearing about trans people. So those are the talking points that become culturally normal. Anyone can claim cultural normalcy. Anyone can claim patriotism. But you have to put yourself out there and make yourself palatable to other people. Nazis figured this out. White supremacy was not a mainstream position 10 years ago. It was 60 years ago, but we were making progress there. So yeah, that's how social constructs work. Like it's, you know, kind of the average of what you see and what you do. I have yet to see any of the people on like the far left especially who are like, Gavin Newsom's a sellout, they've abandoned trans rights. How dare I say, you know, we're not culturally normal. None of them are prepared to make trans people culturally normal. None of them can take an average conservative layperson and explain like their 5 trans rights. None of them can like just get people on board. And it's like just, these are easy conversations to have. Like get some talking points, like figure this stuff out, get some basic explanations. But the gatekeeping, like the leftist infighting and poisoning and purity testing, means like as soon as someone starts to do that, you have someone who's like further to the left will like grab your shoulder and yank you back in and say, no, talk to me at the highest possible college level about this topic and make it as morally pure until I'm satisfied. You can do that. You can engage in the conversation and give them that attention, but you're not even spending any time doing the actually important task, because that moron who like just votes on a whim every time, he's the one who's actually voting and deciding whether or not LGBT people will have rights. And he's easier to convince than you would think. But yeah, just put your normal foot first is important advice. I think be culturally normal is very easy. And I don't think requires any policy sacrifices for any American. But I'm tired of playing on the fully seated, exclusive battleground that trans people are biblical demons, without any pushback or counter offer. Because how does anyone expect to win that fight, to win that argument? What's the other sell? What's the alternative? I don't know. I just don't know. And it doesn't mean, you have to endorse any wacky far-right ideas, but just, like, be able to talk to them. Every election cycle, I see a lot of, like, leftists who are like, my politics are so great and so much better than everyone else's that I'm not going to tell anyone else how I got to my positions. I'm not going to convince anyone else. And I'm going to complain about everyone who actually runs and everyone who actually votes and everyone who actually wins. And, like, it's just a recipe for loss. What happened to persuasion, convincing? Isn't that the point? I thought that's what this was all about. So that's my point. That's my spiel on being culturally normal. I don't think it means what everyone started pearl clutching, fearing it meant. It doesn't have to anyway. And deciding that for yourself, being like having that confidence, be like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do this. Like having any assertion at all is the prerequisite to winning or making progress, right? Like, shouldn't we be able to have conversations like on our own terms, on our own territory? But yeah. My most toxic trait is I fully believe I could get Asmongold on board with trans and non-binary rights. I really do. I think we have to stop approaching people like they're alien monsters. I think being reasonable is fairly easy, actually. It sounds like I'm joking, but I'm not. If I ever had that opportunity, I'd take it. I'm just tired of, I don't know, people on the left who don't try, losing to people on the right who genuinely just want it more and who try. Culturally normal is really just like a king of the hill game. Culturally normal is a king of the hill battle. And you gotta show up and you gotta want it the most and you gotta make the most presence and establish yourself there. And you define what normal is. The alt-right understood the assignment. The alt-left absolutely did not. Here's another news story. This is from Monday at 3:29 p.m. Trump says Iran war will end very soon, predicts lower oil prices. When he said this yesterday, the massive price spike of oil that morning went down by the end of the day. President Donald Trump at a press conference at his golf club near Miami. The war against Iran will end very soon, but not this week. He also predicted oil prices, which had surged above $100 per barrel due to fears that the Strait of Hormuz, when remain effectively closed, will drop. Trump spoke earlier in the day to Russian leader Vladimir Putin about the war, which the U.S. and Israel began on February 28th. This is a reminder that Vladimir Putin is an enemy of the American state. He is one of our biggest competitions on the world stage, and lifting sanctions so he could sell more Russian oil is a detriment to U.S. hegemony. President Donald Trump at a press conference on Monday said the war against Iran will end very soon, and also that oil prices will drop. His rosy prediction came after a weekend that saw the price of oil skyrocket to above $100 per barrel, roiling global financial markets. We're achieving major strides towards completing our military objective, Trump said, 9 days after launching the illegal war on Iran with Israel on February 28th. Those objectives have yet to be defined, by the way. Trump, who with his deputies had offered shifting explanations of what the war's objective is, did not on Monday detail his endgame, instead touting military successes. We've wiped every single force in Iran out very completely, the president said. That's a lie, where he touted the destruction of more than 50 Iranian naval ships and decimation of its air force and anti-aircraft defenses. They have no leadership. It's all been blown up. Iran, by the way, has appointed a new leader. It is just the son of the last guy. And the last guy was like 85, 86 years old. He's going to drop dead any day from old age. So all they really did was not stop a leader with momentum for years to come, but instead instill his son as a new one with a much longer life ahead of him and much more of a cause now to dedicate his lifetime to stop American aggression. Asked if the war would end this week, Trump said no, but added, very soon. He proceeded to threaten further military action if he deems it necessary, so the U.S. has not yet hit some of Iran's most sensitive targets, including its electricity infrastructure. Targeting Iranian electricity infrastructure hurts not just military targets, but a lot of normal people, villagers who need electricity for things like cooking, the same things you would use electricity for. Earlier Monday, an Iranian official suggested that any oil tanker transiting the Strait of Hormuz, a key choke point for crude oil shipments, risked attack by Iran. Only a handful of commercial vessels are moving through the strait, said Matt Smith, oil analyst at Energy Consulting from Kepler. Despite that threat, Trump said oil supplies will be more secure for the world in the long run because of the war, and threatened to hit Iran even harder if it withholds crude from markets. While most of the oil that moves through the Strait of Hormuz is bound for Asia, the U.S. depends on a global supply that is heavy on imports from Asia. We will hit them so hard that it will not be possible for them or anybody else helping them to ever recover that section of the world, Trump said. He also said that the war would be over when Iran no longer had the capacity to use weapons against the U.S., Israel, and other allies for a long time. What is a long time? What does that mean? That is the most nebulous goal one could have. So despite him saying the war would end soon, coincidentally in response to oil prices, which allowed them to drop, today, the next day, Pete Hegseth warns of most intense day of U.S. strikes on Iran yet. This is from The Guardian. Pentagon chief spoke with Dan Kane at a press conference and blamed Iran for civilian casualties. The Pentagon chief, Pete Hegseth, has warned that Tuesday would be the most intense day of U.S. strikes yet, even as he blamed Iran for civilian casualties by claiming its forces were firing missiles from schools and hospitals. This is a reminder that it seems the U.S. has fired a Tomahawk missile, at a young girls' school, killing young girls, not military operatives, and destroying the school where they could have otherwise learned and built good lives. This is a generational problem that will make Iran a worse place, even for peaceful pursuits, over the next, 60 years? Speaking alongside Dan Kane, the chair of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Hegseth alleged Iran was deliberately firing missiles from schools and hospitals, describing the country's leadership as desperate and scrambling like the terrorist cowards they are. Also, sinking ships and refusing to rescue the sailors off of the ship who lived is a desperate, cowardly, terroristic war crime, just FYI. Iran stands alone, and they are badly losing, he added. Kane said that the U.S. Central Command had so far struck more than 5,000 targets to date, destroyed over 50 Iranian naval vessels, and hit several drone factories to degrade Iran's autonomous weapons capability. He said U.S. forces had dropped dozens of 2,000-pound GPS-guided penetrating weapons on deeply buried missile launchers. Ballistic missile attacks continued to diminish, he said, adding that U.S. forces and allies in the region had been intercepting one-way attack drones using fighters and attack helicopters. Hegseth said Iran's neighbors had abandoned them, and that their proxies, Hezbollah, the Houthis, and Hamas, have been either broken, ineffective, or on the sidelines. When pressed on the civilian casualties, which involved a strike that killed more than 165 people at an all-girls school, most of them children, Hegseth instead pivoted to accuse Iran of moving rocket launches into civilian neighborhoods, near schools, near hospitals, to try to prevent our ability to strike. Didn't stop Pete. Wouldn't be the first time this administration's officials weren't stopped from violence against young underage girls. He added, that's how terrorist regimes fight. They target civilians. Like Pete Hegseth, DUI hire, did by targeting a girls' school. We do not, he lied. He insisted no nation in history had taken more precautions to avoid civilian deaths, though acknowledged that investigations take time. And yet, he failed. Pete Hegseth is an embarrassment. He does not have the experience for the job he is in as Secretary of Defense. He is a known alcoholic, impulsive, angry, unprofessional, and has joyously been committing war crimes. Oh yeah, is it a problem that the DHS is a total crap show while he's doing this? Yeah, that probably is a problem. Yeah. Yeah, no, the budget concerns should have been worked out first. Because, as they've been saying, if Iran does in fact have, like, terror cells and stuff, you want domestic departments to be well-funded and well-staffed. You don't want airport security to be good. It's really embarrassing that, like, they did not plan this. Everything about this seems impulsive. Also, right ahead of midterms. Why would you do this? Like, politically, like, everything about this does not make sense for Republicans. It is effectively, like, career suicide. It endangers Americans. It's a waste of money. It's a betrayal of even, like, the people on their own side. Everything about this is just reckless. This makes things worse. Why are you causing oil prices to spike and betraying your core promises in an election year? It's horrific, but I don't expect people to care about empathy or higher principles. I at least expect them to care about their own self-preservation, but that also does not seem to be the case. The Sajare Tayyebe Girls Elementary School was struck on the first morning of the campaign 10 days ago, while about 170 girls aged 7 to 12 were in class. First responders told the Middle East Eye it appeared to be a double-tap strike on the school. If this was a mistake, I doubt it would be a double-tap. A preliminary U.S. assessment found that the United States was likely responsible, and according to CBS News, possibly due to dated intelligence that wrongly identified the site as still part of an adjacent IRGC naval base from which it had been physically separated since 2016. Hegseth declined to comment on reports that Iran's new supreme leader had been wounded, saying only that it would be wise for Iranian leadership to heed the president and renounce nuclear weapons. Mujtaba Khamenei was on Sunday elevated to the position after his father, Ali Khamenei, was killed in the opening strikes of the campaign. Hegseth was emphatic that this conflict would not turn into another open-ended forever war that the U.S. is entangled in. And yet, there are no clear rules for why this war happened or when it will end. I don't know how striking a girls' school furthers any goal. I do not know how many civilians will die. I do not know how many troops will die. But it's more than seven American troops and 150 injuries so far. This is not 2003. This is not endless nation building, he said. Our generation of soldier will not let that happen again. This is, however, endless nation destruction. The new leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, is not a smart or accomplished man. He's a religious radical more than his father. He's stupid, he's extreme, he's cruel. And now he has an anti-American cause that others can rally behind him on. It's a dynasty of worsening evil because of the actions of these fools. He explained how the aftermath is going to be in America's interests and added, "We won't live under a nuclear blackmail scenario of conventional missiles that can target our people." Conventional missiles or nuclear missiles? They destroyed the nuclear capabilities, right? That's what they said. Are they lying then, or are they lying now? Donald Trump, he said, gets to determine the end state, and our will is endless. So it's not going to be endless nation building, but Donald Trump gets to determine the end state, and our will is endless. Okay, so it's not endless nation building. It's endless end state building. Ahead of the press conference, Trump told Fox News that he heard Iran wanted to talk and that it was possible he would have a negotiation with them, though it depended on the terms. But days earlier, on Friday, Trump rejected any off-ramp by posting on Truth Social there would be no deal with Iran except unconditional surrender. This war is just going to keep adding to a body count and a cost of American lives. I hope any young American men watching this understand you are that cost. They haven't rolled out a draft. They aren't going to get people going willingly to die in Iran. Good luck. So that's about it for today. Thanks for watching. I think it's probably a good time to end stream. I'm going to try to post some videos on YouTube, some like clips and segments from this. We'll see how that goes. So until tomorrow, I'll see you around. Thanks for being here.